gonna just see if a couple more jump in a little late.
Okay.
So if we sit in silence a little bit, don't worry, we are here.
Just, can I ask you a question while we're waiting?
Yes. So when we petition part, it's nice to learn and have, but realize it won't pertain to your situation.
Okay. Thank you.
While we're waiting, because I thought, well, it's 7 after, so I'd say we'll wait 3 more minutes. But do you have any other, is this going to be your first accounting, hun?
Actually, I'm a CPA, I'm a retired CPA, but I've never done trusts. And I'm the executor for my father's estate. And I'm in the process of working with an attorney to submit the final accounting for the trust, but his trust.
Did he pass away?
Yes, it's been 6 years.
Yeah.
But I have 3 siblings, and each of them has a special needs trust.
Got it. Yes.
So that's what I've been, and I had the attorney redo the accounting. I already had it done, but turned out to be fairly expensive, and I don't think the company they used was very
you need to say more. I've seen it all, honey. I've seen it all. And once I think, you are able to take this class as many times as you want. So say you were getting into it and maybe it's not something's happening, it's not balancing, or something is just not clicking and you're remembering from this class. You are able to take it again. The only thing I do state is the information that we state or we provide repeats. So there's really not a whole bunch, there will be nothing new in a next class, nothing new that we'll teach, but it would be a refresh of what you're learning here today.
Okay.
But you are able, we do it about every 2 months. Rex and I need to sit down and do a calendar for the rest of the year. That has not been done yet. So you'll see when he puts up the slide about the counting workshop. We do it about every 2 months. It's always the 3rd Thursday. Here he put it up. The 3rd Thursday of the month. Now, when we get into between January and April, that's tax season. So we have a bigger gap. But we do it about every 2 months, and you are able to attend the class as many times as you want. And also, if you're venturing off yourself, I don't know about if you're using an attorney, I always suggest you go to that person for questions. But if you had 1 or 2 questions, like this looks odd, or this doesn't look right, or blah, 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 I, at the end of the class, will give my email address. And I've always told everybody, if it's a simple 15 minutes where I glance and I go, I can tell right away where you're off or where you're having troubles, I'd be happy to do that, no charge. But if it takes a couple hours, of course, that's a whole different story. But if you run into something like that, you are able to email me. I will take a quick look and see if I can help you locate where you're not balancing or what just seems to be off or doesn't look right to you. And then I will show you what that is, or tell you might want to look at this section of what the accounting, and then you're able to somewhat figure it out.
And I also offer, when people call, they have a question about this and that, not so much reviewing the papers, but, short telephone questions.
But Rex, you charge, right?
Not on an initial, just a simple question about an accounting, though. If
Okay.
it, gets into 15 plus minutes, yeah. But a lot of times it's, what do I do with this? I had one just recently, what's the sale price on a foreclosure? So, I mean, it's just an unusual transaction.
Mhm.
Well, it's almost it's almost 9:15 and it's cutting into our time so I think we should just get started and whoever joins after can. So Rex, if you want to start your introduction and then I will get into the only other person on is Patty. And we did have earlier Bessie, but I don't know what happened to her. But Patty, just out of curiosity, while we're getting started, can you tell me a little bit about your situation and are you here prepper or are you just trying to learn as like an LDA or a CPA or somebody like that?
Yeah, I'm a 30-year probate paralegal. I've been preparing accountings for over 20 years. And I just wanted to listen to see what you guys have to say about the accountings in case
Okay.
I can learn something.
Okay, great. Okay, awesome. But see, it helps, and don't be shy about this. I get it, but it helps me understand kind of a little bit how to tailor and how I'm taught with you. I know you won't have many questions as we go along because you know what I'm saying, but others, who are brand new or have never done this will have a whole lot more questions, right?
Yeah. And I've done every single kind of accounting that exists. I've done it, Yeah, so I'm an independent contractor, probate paralegal. So I work for a bunch of attorneys and fiduciaries throughout the state.
That's awesome. I do also. So I'm right there with you. Yes, and have been doing it a while. And I've seen all kinds of accountings. They're quite interesting sometimes.
Yes.
But I learned from those wrong accountings. I really do.
Yeah, I taught myself how to do them back in,
Oh, right on. Right on.
And yeah, and then when the first time I balanced one, it was so exciting. I was like, oh, I love this.
Michelle, you'll have the exact same experience. You'll go right on. Always an accomplishment when you balance the first time you go, oh, right on, thank God.
Right.
And then there's sometimes I balance and then I add a couple of things and then all of a sudden I'm not balancing. So I go, okay, back to the drawing board. Just back it up, start where I was and redo it because something happened in between.
Yeah.
So no, when you get it balanced your first time, you're going to go, oh, right on. So Rex, go ahead. Let's start the class. It's 9:15.
Okay, so welcome to the Fiduciary Accounting Program, sponsored by the Contra Costa County Superior Court Law Library. My name is Rex Crandell. I'm a CPA and attorney in Walnut Creek. And my co-presenter is Tamara Brown, who's a tax person, a legal document assistant, paralegal, mother of four, and she's does everything. And what we're going to be covering is how to prepare a court accounting. It's different than any other accounting. Going through CPA school, they didn't even mention this once. It's all from California statute. It's sort of uniform around the country, but California has way more requirements than any other state that I'm aware of, and that's what we're covering. The material that we present is on the State Judicial Council forms from the court, and it provides us a speaking platform and an outline of the system I'll also in the material, I point out it's in handout number 2. A different format. I'll just overview it, not spending much time on it. Excuse me, I've got some kind of cough bug. So another way that's not on judicial council that is accepted by the courts is a method using Excel. And with that method, you have to have a cover sheet on your accounting. And that cover sheet is called GC 400 sum. And that's the cover sheet. But back to the Excel type of format, this basically, the income and expenses are on the front sheet, the summary sheet. You can have this summary sheet presented, but you have to use the government GC 400 on top. And the way that this is set up is the assets on hand, beginning and ending, but instead of using separate schedules all the way through the accounting, all separate schedules for income, separate schedules for disbursements, this method, which is acceptable to the court, shows all the receipts during the period chronologically. And then after showing all the receipts chronologically, then it shows all of the receipts by category, by vendor. And so it gives you 2 different formats for the same information. It's duplicative, but it has a reason. And then the disbursements during the period are shown the same way. Completely every disbursement chronologically, and then every disbursement broken out by category. And any other schedule that's needed to report, like change in form of assets, which we'll cover, is shown separately. So we spend the majority of our time in this class on the government judicial council forms, which can be used. I point out the majority of accountings that are filed in court use more of the spreadsheet format, but it has to include the same information. So that's in handout number 2 called Account Egger Trust. Then another handout that I want to point out is handout 3. And this handout is background information. We're not going to cover it. I assembled it to help people learn about court accounting. And it's instructions, simplified instructions from court websites, background information, common mistakes. And then when you get a little bit more advanced, and you're trying to find out a particular transaction, I have schedules showing probate code sections if you want to look up to try to figure out something. And then that's helpful at times. And then we have a little spreadsheet that we make available for people for I think $50. It is kind of a rudimentary court accounting spreadsheet. It's not the most sophisticated in the world, but it can be used. And then another component of this handout that may be helpful are, I contacted our Contra Costa Superior Court probate examiners, and I got the checklist that they use when they get an accounting when they're going through it. for completeness. They don't let the judge look at it until they've scoured it. And the checklist at the time when I got these, this was the latest checklist that the examiners were using. It looks like it was from 2018. So that's material that we've made available.
And I'm going to interject in there. Understand that checklist is likely from Contra Costa Superior Court. I can tell you, I do many accountings down south. They have a completely different idea of what they want, how they want it presented, what it needs to say, blah, blah, blah. So sometimes it's also really good, depending on whatever county you're in, to look at the local court rules, because the local court rules for that court will tell you the different things that they require. So don't be upset or put off if you used his checklist for Contra Costa and LA Superior Court or Orange County or Riverside or any of those have totally different things they wish.
Have you sent out those handouts?
Those handouts should have been sent out by Carrie Ruan at the law library with the invitation. She stated she was going to attach them, but we don't actually know. If they're not, we can resend.
Okay, I got the handbook for conservators, but that was the only
Okay.
one.
Yeah. And then
Okay.
the last form, it's not in your material, but it's a reference. Before I give it over to Tamara to start her portion, is the judicial counsel forms from the court. You can get them online. There are services, essential forms from CEB and different ones. There is a free form service from riversidelegal.org, and it's got 33 of the accounting forms, and it is fillable. And I just point that out that it is available. So with that, I'd like to, Tamara and I have broken up our material differently. My subject area is more of the accounting summary and then the detailed schedules. Tamara's section goes into great detail on preparing the inventory and appraisal and how that is required to be put together. And then Tamara also goes over the petition to the court for approval of the accounting by the judge. So with that, I want to turn it over to Tamara. And this is the first time we've done two hosts. So bear with us as we do this, because we're also getting accustomed to sharing screen. Each of us sharing screen. So I'm going to switch control of the screen over to Tamara now so she can control her pages. And we'll switch back and forth. And then after she's done, I will come back and talk about the financial schedules. And Tamara, if you want me to run the schedules by page number, I'll be happy to do that for you.
Okay, I think I got it. All I want to do is make sure everybody can see my screen and it's not cut off because I can't tell what you can see.
We can see all the way down to page 9, line 9, I should say, on your statement of the bond.
Okay, great. Okay, got it. Okay, I'm going to go through it rather quickly because I know Patty here, you already know about this. Michelle, I'm going to just run through it quickly because this for you will not pertain regarding trust accounting. It's just, you don't have to do an inventory and appraisal for trust accounting. So I'm gonna go through it anyway so I can show you what the purpose is and how typically I would start a probate, conservatorship, or guardianship accounting. Because for me to start that accounting, I have to have this document itself. This document itself must be it must be done, and this is what I use. So typically this is a blank form. It is filled out for a pro per, but for example purposes, it's already been filled out by an attorney, or as if the attorney is filing this. This document is extremely important to me. When I am going to start an accounting, this is the first document I ask for. I don't even ask for bank statements. If you don't have this document right here and it is not complete, there's nothing I can do to start an accounting. So it's really important to me. I glance at it. I want to make sure, like for instance, it looks like all the assets are there. And all the information from this document goes over to your accounting when you do the beginning or assets at the beginning of the account period. If, for instance, when I get a bank statement, and we'll go through once I get to the second page, if I get a bank statement and it doesn't match the numbers on this as your starting period, I have to tell you, I cannot continue, and the inventory and appraisal needs to be reported to the court with corrected values. Because what happens is you're never going to balance. And the court has a copy of this. And again, I'm talking probates, conservatorships, and guardianships, not necessarily yours, Michelle, because you're a trust. So the court doesn't look at these things, but it gives you an idea of the flow and how you get your numbers, or how you even get started. So typically, again, this form is blank. If you were a pro per, you would fill it out by putting your information up here, your phone number. An email address is important because if the court needs to contact you for any reason, typically they'll use the email address on file. They don't call you, and you know how if they mail you something, it could take forever. So they kind of, I don't think, tend to mail anything. Under the attorney for, that would be the pro per's name, and it would say, for instance, if your name was David and you were the conservator, you would also include the words pro per. Right here in this section, it just states what court you're presenting this document in. You have the name of in this example, it is a conservatee. So even though it says estate of, which really references a decedent, you would still put the name of the conservatee or the name of the decedent and mark this box, or the name of the minor if it was a guardianship. Again, for a trust, you wouldn't do this, but this is the information that's needed. Now we come down to this section right here, which in some cases, if I get this and it's marked partial, I have to immediately, before I even start the accounting, go back to the person and go, okay, I need the final, because working on a partial is not helpful because I'm missing assets. So that's one of the things I'll go through. When I see it's marked final, I understand that everything here is my assets and how I'm starting. Sometimes there will be a supplemental, and the supplemental can be used in a few different ways. I recently took a class with some probate referees, and they were giving different examples on what would be a supplemental. And a supplemental would be, say I found an asset after the fact or something like that. I would mark it a supplemental. I would add the asset, and then if it depends on if it's an asset you value or an asset the probate referee values, I would then go through that portion. This one over here is corrected. So say, for instance, somebody turned in a final, I determine that the numbers don't match, like a bank statement, and it has to be corrected. Otherwise, the probate examiners will not approve, will not let your accounting go through. So a corrected one, say for instance, and when we get down to where I list banks, so I list Wells Fargo Bank, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I, in the prior final, I already filed, said the balance in the account was $100. But I've looked at the bank statement, and that's not a true statement. It's $102.53. I would do a corrected only for the line item I'm correcting. I wouldn't recorrect the entire inventory appraisal. And then we have another thing called reappraisal for sale. That's for probate and or conservatorships. Mainly, it would not really pertain to a guardianship. And all that really is if you're going to sell a piece of real property, either in the name of the decedent, and this would be this would be if you are appointed an administrator and you were only given limited authority. Limited authority means you have to have court approval to sell that real property. You must get a reappraisal within 1 year of the sale of that property, of its value. The purpose for that is so that the court can determine if your sales price is accurate or within a certain range that's acceptable. So say, and I'll give you an example, say a probate referee valued the property at $500,000, but you don't know and nobody else knows. I'm kind of selling it to a friend and I want to sell it to her for $300,000 and I need court approval to do it. The court would likely not approve that sale, obviously, right? Because they're going to see, why would the probate referee value it at 500 and you're trying to sell it at 3? There are some circumstances where that happens. Maybe the probate referee, I didn't give him enough information when I asked him to value, and the entire inside of the house is uninhabitable. The bathrooms don't work, or there's no hot water heater. Yeah, believe it or not, I had a property where the renters took with them when they left the hot water heater. That deems the property you just can't, right? It wouldn't go through, not only that, it wouldn't go through a regular sale. It would have to be an all cash sale and things of that nature. So you're getting into other sticky situations with this, but that would be a reason for reappraisal. Also a conservatorship, say you're doing a conservatorship and the conservatorship started in 2012, you have determined that the conservatee can no longer ever go back to that residence. And really, it's just an expense to that conservatee that you just keep paying property taxes, mortgage, home insurance, HOA fees, gardening, landscaping, all this stuff. And I'm using she, will never go back to the property. Well, you're actually losing money for this conservatee. So you may decide, hey, I want to sell it. First of all, conservatorships, you can never sell a property without having court approval. Don't ever try it. Don't ever do it. No, only the court can approve the sale of property. And before you even think to sell it, you need to get approval to sign a listing agreement. So there are several things that need to be done. But in that case, we would have to need a reappraisal from the probate referee to give us today's current value, because last time the probate referee did provide value, it would have been on the date of the appointment. So being that that was 12 years ago, the value is completely different today. So you would ask for a reappraisal. The other thing is a property tax certificate. That's a completely different thing. I have used that one time in my many years of doing these, so that's not a common box that will be marked when doing an inventory and appraisal. I'll get, Michelle, you have a question?
Oh, sorry, I was saying goodbye to my husband.
Oh, sorry. I was like, okay, she's trying to get my attention, because I was going to say, I'm going to stop right after this and ask if you have any questions. So on the form, you would list the case number. This is very helpful for the probate referee. And when you turn this in, the court knows what case to file this under. The date of appointments, very important. So it used to be, and I would say this happens more down south, the date of the death, which would be, if it was a decedent's estate right here, you would put the date of death. If it was a conservatorship, typically we've always taught the class that this date right here would be the date the court signed the order for conservatorship, which is the GC 340. Now, I have experience, particularly in down south courts. We're talking all of LA, Orange County, Riverside, and in fact, San Joaquin County also, that the court does not accept the date of the order. They want the date you applied or turned or filed your petition for conservatorship. They state at that point they want it started. So even though somebody could technically argue, I didn't have control of the bank then, or bank account, or I wasn't able to access or have control on what checks were written or what automatic withdrawals were coming out at that point, because I didn't present my letters to the court to say I have authority, they don't care. So I continue to use the date that the order was signed and move forward with that. And then if you do get examiner notes that says you have to back it up to whatever date they wish it, then it can be easily added after the fact. But let's go forward with just putting the date the order was signed. Now, typically this date is very important to me. And again, another reason why it has to be accurate, because I will look at that and nothing else. And that's the date I'm starting your accounting. So if it says March 8th, 2012 there, even though you might not have got your order until June, I'm starting it on March 8th because that's the date I'm looking at right here. So again, this form helps me in various ways when doing the accounting, because this is the date I'm starting your accounting. Now, that only applies if this is your first accounting that you're turning in. So probate, you really only turn in one accounting. Conservatees, the accountings due the first year after appointment, and then every 2 years after that. So if I'm doing a second accounting for a conservatorship, I'm not using this date as my start date. I'm using the day after the last accounting went through. So if the last accounting went through March 8th, 2012 and continued to March 7th, 2013, my next accounting is going to start on March 8th. Now, in the real world, it doesn't happen that way. I have so many conservatorships, they don't realize that their accounting was due the first year. So they now want to do and accounting from March 8th, 2012 to, let's say, June 20th of 2024, so that they capture more than 1 year and they bring it all up to date. Perfectly fine to do that, perfectly fine. And then I know my next accounting is going to be started on June 21 of 2024 and will continue like a 2-year period. So it kind of jumps off the track. So we're gonna continue as if this is the first accounting. Again, Michelle, this also kind of would apply to you. If your trust and you became a trustee says that the accounting has to be done every year, and I heard you say you have quite a few years to do it on, you would go ahead and do your time period that extends maybe to the current time. And then your next one, because a trustee, and especially a special needs trust, depending upon if the special needs trust is governed or let's say monitored by the court, that's a totally different, that needs to be turned in yearly. But if you're only doing it for the person that owns the special needs trust and everybody else who's required to have notice, it should be done yearly. But you can pick up if you slacked on the yearly thing, catch up now and then do it yearly going forward. But that is truly your obligation to provide a yearly statement, especially to the owner or the recipient of the special needs trust, because they're entitled to know if you're spending any of the money, if you're having income, and actually what is going on with that special needs trust. Now, it also could be a special needs trust for a minor where mom is watching what's going on. She wants to make sure nothing's going out that shouldn't and things like that. The yearly accounting of that is very helpful because you're limiting your liability to that time period of the accounting. Remember, when you turn in an accounting, you're still liable until, like I said, the statute runs where they can no longer contest it, only if you've provided that they only have this time period to contest. So once that time period is over, you're kind of, let's say, taking care of your responsibility, although I've seen in courts, they still go back and do it. The court will look and go, hey, you had this time to object, you didn't, and we might not hold her responsible. But if you do only once a year, like you're supposed to, you're limiting, your liability to that year, as opposed to 4 years that you're doing it at once. So I would do it yearly if I was you. Better practice, you get less people who are angry or upset or want to contest because they feel you're making them important by giving them the information that they deserve, right? It's theirs, it's not yours, and you have no reason to hide anything, right? You're just doing like numbers and tasks. So there's no reason for you to hide anything. And just don't go that long of a period of time. Keep it keep it up. It also, Michelle, grounds if they wanted to ask for removal of you or somebody and appoint somebody else, because they are supposed to have it timely and yearly. So take all that away and just do it yearly. That's the simplest thing. Okay. So at this point, because we'll get in more technicalities here, does anybody, Patty, I know you probably don't have any questions. Michelle, do you have any? This really doesn't pertain to you, so I doubt you'd have questions on it, but you'll get to understand why it's important once we start the account. Okay. So there are two different attachments.
I put my question in the chat.
Okay, and Tiffany, you jumped in. I didn't even see you come in. Honey, what type of, and I probably said your name was Tiffany and it's Tiffinat.
Tiffany's just fine.
Okay, what type of case are you on a probate, a conservatorship, a minor, or are you just trying to learn to possibly prepare accountings?
Probate down south.
Oh, so you're listening to all I'm saying here about the down south stuff, right? Got you. So this is a little bit different for you and much more important. You will have this document. If you don't have it, you need to do it before you can do the accounting, but likely you have it before you even get to this point. So I'm sorry, hun, what was your question?
So when I submitted my first and final appraisal, I included a bank account that had a beneficiary because the bank basically didn't release the bank account.
Correct.
They wanted all the letters of testamentary, and they gave me a really hard time. And I've included it because it has a beneficiary.
Okay, so what I would do if I was you is I would complete this form with just this box corrected marked. And I would, on the attachment 1, because you state it's a bank account, and we'll get there and I'll show you, you will just put that bank name and number, and you will put 0 in the value, and the court will know that's you correcting that before you had 5,000 and now it really was 0. So they will move forward, and that's how I would correct that. Makes sense?
Because it's already been signed by the probate referee.
That's okay. A bank account does not get valued by a probate referee. It gets valued by you as the administrator, so you don't have to worry about what the probate referee has already signed. You're only correcting the one line item. You're not correcting the entire inventory and appraisal.
Okay.
Got it?
Yep.
You'll see more when we get down in the next page, hun. And you'll have plenty of time to ask the question again if I don't cover it. Is that okay? And just an FYI to you all that are here, hun, please understand that while we're teaching, it's extremely difficult to watch chats because 1, it distracts me because I need to watch the screen that I'm teaching, and 2, I just don't see it. So again, as we go through, I'm going to ask you many times if you have questions. That's your time to ask the question that you put in the chat. But it's really hard for me to try and watch the chat and stay on timing. So don't be shy. No question's a dumb question. Absolutely no question is a dumb question ever. So feel free to ask away. But okay, so I'm going to continue on. In this section right here, we have 2 different parts. You have attachment 1 and attachment 2. Attachment 1 are cash equivalent assets, which we will go through, and they are valued by you as the conservator, as the administrator, as the executor, as the guardian, as the trustee. But trustees wouldn't fill out this. But attachment 1 is valued by you, and I will go through what assets to include on attachment 1. Attachment 2 can only be appraised by the probate referee. Attachment 2 will include all non-cash assets, and we will go through examples of what a non-cash asset is. And so here, again, I'm going to flip back to the screen after I've gone through attachment 1 and showing you what it is. So right now is a great point. I will come back and explain the rest of the form. So I'm going to go slide down. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy. This is attachment 1. Please notice that the actual inventory and appraisal is what they call DE. That means decedent's estate, DE 160. So if you're in probate, examiners will refer to DE 160, right? Is you need to do this, or you need to correct the DE 160. They'll just use that name in probate only. For conservatorships or guardianships, the examiners will use a reference GC040. You say, well, it's the same form. I understand, but it's dependent upon if you're a conservator or a guardian, whether they will reference the GC, or a decedent's estate, meaning probate, will reference the 160. So notice on the attachments that we are going to go through, the attachments to the inventory and appraisal are reference a tiny bit different number in the fact that they bump up one. So it's either they're going to call it, if it's a probate, a DE 161 or a GC 041, and that means your attachments. So we have copied the name of what we have already included on our inventory and appraisal on that first page. Keep in mind, especially for down south, that if your caption does not read on your second page exactly like it reads on the first page, there are many times the file clerks, when you try, because some of us have to submit online only, they will reject the filing because they'll say the captions are inconsistent. So that's what they're talking about. Your name here was different on page 1, and it should not be. So here's your case number. You're going to mark if it's, again, probates, decedent, always, conservatee, well, yes. And conservatee is if it's a conservatorship, minor is a guardianship. Okay, so again, back to the form. What are we putting on attachment 1, which is always valued by the administrator, the conservator, or the guardian? So this attachment will be blank. You'll include the number 1. You put how many pages you're including, and you'll start by listing your items. So in this case, and these are only examples, in your case, you may not have all of these. You may only have one of these. You may have 2 of these. You may have, one of the, it can all be different. So this is only examples. You do not need to find all of these. You do not need to list all of these, only if it pertains to you. So in this example, this is a conservatorship. And when the conservatorship was ordered, the conservator went to the residence of the conservatee and happened to know she had cash in her wallet, right? This is a very different thing to consider. For older people, I don't mean that because I am the older person, so I don't mean that negatively. Older people always have cash on them. That's how they feel secure. It just means the world to them. They always have cash. A little bit younger generation, I think I'm right smack in the middle, but I'm one of those, I never have cash on me. Never. It's always a card, right? So please understand, this is a tiny bit an older version, but this is, you're indicating that this person had $250 in their wallet. A younger person would go, wow, who carries $250 in their wallet? Let me tell you, my dad passed away last year in January. He always had at least close to this amount of money in his wallet. I'd always ask him, what for? Use your card. Like, why? That's dangerous. But it made him feel secure. And I think that's just how they grew up and what they needed then, because cards weren't available or weren't even thought of. So cash, they always had to have cash, or they feel a tip, or just being kind to the gardener outside because he did something a little extra. He always wanted some type of cash to be able to hand the man, right? Or the person that helped him. So cash is important to them. So I've indicated here that there was cash. I myself am very funny because realize this is a public document, meaning in a lot of counties, especially down in LA, I can pick up any case I want, type in the case number, and I can see everything I want to see on the docket sheet, right? I can pull up anybody's case. Now, do I want to? No, I don't have time for that. But if you find somebody who doesn't have the purest intentions, that could be scary. So if I'm putting out there that one, I have a conservatee, immediately to some people that clicks, oh, they might be vulnerable, right? And I've put the exact address of where they're living. I know that this person has cash on them. And if I'm not the purest person, it could be wrong intentions. So I never indicate this. I would put cash found at conservatee's residence. That's all they need. The court doesn't need any more information than that. And then I'd put the dollar amount. Okay, so now we have balance in a checking account. Please be careful, especially LA. They will give you quite a stern warning at the very beginning if you do it once. A second time, you're likely going to be sanctioned or something else where you cannot display or give a person's confidential information. It's detrimental to them. It's detrimental to you, and the courts don't want it either. So what I do and everybody else does in that case is I will take likely the last 4 digits of the account number, or I will only use, in this case, they used 5. You can, do whatever you want. You have to somewhat try for the court and tie this to what you will turn in later, which are bank statements. So you have to give them some type of indication on the number. Maybe you only list 2 numbers because maybe there's only 4 numbers in the whole account number. So use your discretion, but remember, you're trying to keep this information. You're trying to give the court enough information, but trying to keep the confidentiality of the actual account number private, right? I also do not include an address. If you're talking Wells Fargo Bank, please, I don't know what Wells Fargo Bank, what city they actually opened in. They might be in Newport Beach now, but they opened it in Walnut Creek. How would I'm not going through that, and it's not necessary. So typically I'll just put balance in account number 123, Wells Fargo Bank, right? And this is very important. And this, I'm going to go back to Tiffany, what this means. So if I look at this number right here, and you've indicated balance in the account, and in this case, it was on date of death, it was 7/8/42/38. I'm going to the first bank statement. I'm looking at your bank statement, and I'm looking to see it really was this balance. If it is not, I can't continue because I'll never balance, right? Not only that, the court gets a copy of the bank statements. And what do you think they're looking at? The exact same thing I'm looking at. They're going to go, no, this doesn't work. You need to file a corrected now inventory and appraisal because I look at your bank statement and this was not the balance that you indicated. So again, on a corrected one, Tiffany, this would be just for you. On a second corrected one you would file, you would state, I probably would even state final inventory and appraisal filed on 10/12/23 indicated balance in account number 1234 was this actual balance was 0. And that's how I would turn in a corrected one. So you're really giving them, I thought there was a balance in there. I thought it was this, or I reported this, later found out there was a beneficiary statement. So actual balance is 0. So you're telling the court why up front, and you're telling everybody why, because remember, this inventory and appraisal, once it's done, was already sent out to all beneficiaries of a probate or all family members of a conservatorship and or guardianship. And in some cases on a guardianship, let me give you the example. If there's, say we have a minor who is part of a tribe, an Indian tribe, you have to notice a whole slew of different government agencies that, regulate tribe stuff, and you've already sent it out. So they also will be curious why now you first said there's $7,842 in there, and now you're reporting there's nothing. They're going, did you steal it? That will be the first thought. I don't care who you talk to, right? Because you probably, if you got it, would say the same. Well, what happened to $7,000, right? You're going to immediately think, wait, are you trying to, blindside me? Are we trying? So that if you give that explanation, Tiffany, of why you're correcting it for that purpose, it is going to be clear as ever, and you'll never have to explain. But you would only have the one line item on your corrected inventory and appraisal. Let me stop and make sure for her. Does that make sense, hon?
So I don't need to list, like if I had numbers 1 through 7, I only have to list
you only list the one you're correcting.
Okay, so it would be like I was listing, say I was listing number 2 and 3 because it's the same account, because it has the same beneficiary. So then I just write those 2 and just correct it that it had a beneficiary.
Correct. That no.
Well, do I include the letter from the bank?
No.
Okay.
So you would put that the original number reported was 7842, but you later learned there was a beneficiary statement on file, so balance is 0. Got it? Okay, great. Okay, so continuing on, another example would be a savings account. Remember, if the savings account is with the same bank as the checking, or 2 is checking or 3 is savings, you must list them separately. You can't combine them, even if your bank statement has them combined. You know how, and I'll use Wells Fargo because I'm with Wells Fargo. So my Wells Fargo bank statement will have checking up top and then savings right below it, right? And it'll be on the same bank statement. That doesn't mean you can combine them together and put a total. You must list each separately. So in this case, we have a savings account. Again, I don't put the address of the bank. And remember this number, first thing I'm going to is your bank statement. If it matches, perfect. If it doesn't, nope, I can't go on because I won't balance. And the court won't approve your accounting, so I'm wasting your money also, and I don't do that. So I will immediately stop and say, hon, I can't go forward. This needs to be correct. So a certificate of deposit, you don't see this often when you go into somebody's home, or typically if they're at the point they need a conservatorship, they don't even know they have this, or they won't remember they have this. But if you do find it in their documentation, or if you know of it because you're a daughter or related and you just have known of it, please indicate as much information as you can. and what the amount is. The only thing I'm thinking though is I've done a few CDs and it went on a attachment 2 and we had the probate referee value that, but okay, well, our example has it on 1, so you can put it there. If the court accepts it, they may say they want the probate referee to value this. So in this case, again, you don't see this much anymore. Prior to direct deposits or banks just doing an automatic transfer into account, you all will remember we used to get checks in the mail for Social Security, for pensions, for, whatever. A check arrived. So when you were supposed to be paid or get your Social Security on the 1st, you may not get it in the mail till like the 5th, right? Now that really doesn't happen, but so realize this person in our example got the check on March 1st. You didn't take over till March 8th. So for a week, that conservatee had that check at home, just in an envelope. They never even opened it or what the case would be. You must indicate that. Again, I don't see this often now. In fact, I don't see it at all. It's all direct deposit, right, into an account. Same thing with Social Security. Social Security does all electronic transfer, direct deposit into an account. Dividends also get pretty much, no, sometimes dividend checks work. So this indicates to me, and there are a few things I look at when I'm going to prepare an accounting. So if I look at somebody's inventory and appraisal and I see this dividend check, oh, that means there's a dividend account, which again, I'll see that also on attachment 2. I know if the person has asked me to prepare the accounting for them and they haven't provided me a dividend bank statement for the accounting, I know I need to ask for it. But in this case, so what a dividend check is there are some mutual funds and annuities and brokerage, stock brokerage accounts, etc., that there's 2 ways. You can either, depending on the age, depending on how the account set up, you can get a monthly dividend check sent to you, or the accounts will reinvest the dividend check. It kind of gets a tiny bit complicated. More so you see the dividends being reinvested, which are a completely different line item that goes to the accounting because, you're reporting higher now amounts. You would just list dividend interest on the accounting, and then that increases the value so that when you get to assets at the end, because you must report them at the end, it would have the correct balance. So this can also include, which I didn't see it for a long time, but it's been coming up rather a lot lately. And again, you see it with older people, is coins and the collection of coins. Again, coin collections, even though to you they are cash, there's a couple different ways to handle them. Now, let me just give you an example. My father did not like spending change. So every time, he went out and came home, he threw his change in an old Folgers coffee, this big, huge, round Folgers coffee can, right? And then put the lid on it when it got full and it went into the bottom of the closet. I don't know what he was saving it all for. But now, because my mother and I, let's just say when I was a whole lot younger, would raid that cash for little goodies and snacks before school or something like that. And let me tell you, my father knew about it, never said a word, but he'd always refill the can. So we knew he knew that we were, and it was always a race between my mother and I because she'd grab the quarters and I'd be stuck with the nickels. Um, and then I have to take a whole lot more to get the same amount she's getting because I got nickels. And it would always be funny when I go into the little 7-Eleven, you know, right around the corner for school, and I'd walk in with a pocket full of nickels to try and pay for my stuff. But that's how it worked, right? So when you're talking pennies, nickels, quarters, stuff like that, it does go on attachment 1. If you're talking coins that are from maybe different state, or there are special coins like the 50-cent pieces that might be worth more than the 50-cent piece, then a probate referee has to value that and you have to give them that. If they are like Indian coins or some type of other currency, a probate referee has to value that, right? Because they're the ones that have to dig into what's the value of that item at a specific time. And they're able to look that up a whole lot easier and more than you as the administrator can. So careful on the little coins. Now, here's the other thing I will tell you right now. If or when my father passed away and I had to do a probate, if you think I'm going to sit there and count, because by the time he passed away, there was really only pennies in there, I am not going to count a whole Folgers jar full of pennies. That would take me more than a year, and I just wouldn't do it. So there is such thing as putting a 18-ounce Folgers container full of pennies and estimating maybe the value until you take it, and that's up to you whether you want to take it to one of those coin banks. I don't think banks, it used to be also that you could get these paper roll things that you could stuff pennies in and then turn in the rolls to the bank. I don't even think banks do that anymore, but they won't let you walk in with a can full of pennies either and tell them to count them. So that's one of the things that you will go through. So once you're done and you have all your assets, you will put a total. And if you notice this 57, 8, 44, 59 transfers right back over to here. And that's the only time you'll put a value. So again, I look at attachment 1 and make sure the total on that attachment 1 equals the same total on my front page. If it doesn't, guess what I'm doing? I'm going, either you have a corrected inventory and appraisal I haven't seen, or we need to correct this before I can get started. Okay, let's move to any questions on attachment 1 only assets, which are only cash assets? Awesome. Let's go to attachment 2 now. Again, same form. You'll notice DE 161 or GC 041. State name, Jeannie. Case number, same case number. But instead of attachment 1, you're stating this is attachment 2. And you put how many pages. Now, attachment 2 assets. Attachment 2 assets are non-cash assets that only can be valued by a probate referee. Right? They have a special license. They're appointed. The values they give, the court believes wholeheartedly that's the real value, and they take whatever they value assets as. So let's go through examples of what assets would be a probate referee value. Let's say real property. Please keep in mind when you're talking, these probate referees, you know, they have all kinds. And if you just say an address, that's not how we try and give them as much information we can about a property or what we're asking them to value. In this case, It says real property in the city of Newport Beach. That's great. What county? Great. State of California. Now I can tell this description has come directly off of a deed or legal description of this property because of the way they state. Described as lot 36, blah, 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 county recorder. The property is commonly known as, so you provided an address. It is an improved single family dwelling. I typically do not put those words in there. And I will list the assessor parcel number. So I have the ability to run deeds, so I can get this legal description and provide it to the probate referee. But the majority of people out there, pro-pers and others, don't have access to that. So in your case, you will put as much information, you know, the address of the property. You may know an APN number by looking at a property tax statement or somehow looking it up, but maybe you don't. You would know the city and the county. One important thing that the probate referees always tell me, and in the class it was really important. If the house is not, let's say, in a good condition, most of the times they are not, but sometimes, you know, quite often they are. Say, for instance, it was a rental, and which that's down here, but it was a rental and the renters trashed the inside of the home. It is not going to be the same value as if it is a good, ready to go, put on the market house or something like that. So in those cases, if you don't tell that probate referee that the whole inside is trashed, it's missing walls, it doesn't have a hot water heater, the electrical in some rooms are completely destroyed, it doesn't have a stove or oven because it got taken out, or the sink doesn't work, or things of that nature. If you don't tell the probate referee, he doesn't know. And if you tell him, he's going to give you a more appropriate value of the residence, right? So why is that kind of important? Not only are we reporting these values to beneficiaries, but say you want to go sell it. So he's valued the property at 500,000 and you can only get 300 because it needs so much damn work, or it has to be an all cash sale because a lender would not even lend money on a house that is missing a hot water heater. They would not. So in that case, you're kind of giving them an idea of things, or like a poor thing. I have a conservatorship. Squatters got in the house, which is very common. Squatters got in the house. By the time they were able to go through eviction, evict the squatters, get the house back, the squatters had opened up the walls and stole copper piping out of the walls so they could sell the copper piping. So if I didn't tell the probate referee that, that's huge. Like, and she doesn't, and neither does the conservator, have the money to repair it. She does not have it. So the house has to be sold all as is, has to be a cash house. You know, if I didn't tell the probate referee that, in some cases, I send pictures to the probate referee, like holes in the wall or whatever. I will send with my documentation to the probate referee pictures so they can see for themselves the damage inside, right? So do as much as you can, give them as much information as you can so that they can value. This right here is a vacation home. Again, give as much information as you can. Household furniture and furnishings, I typically don't add this much. They value the entire household furniture and furnishings at a very low amount. sometimes 100, sometimes at 500 at the most, and you're going, wait, whoa, it's brand new sofa and blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? If you're going to sell that house, you're not going to get the same value as what it was purchased for. Now, this does not include if you have antiques or like an antique armoire or an antique or a chest that's full of antique, I don't know, vases or, tea sets or teacups, I have quite a few of my great grandmother's teacups, right? They're mismatched and they're not a set by no means, but I have them. And are they of value? I have no clue, but I love them. They're beautiful and I'm going to keep them. But if you have something like that inside the house, make sure you state it. Because even if you feel that some things might not be of value to you, they could mean something to somebody else who is a beneficiary. And I'm telling you, I have cases where beneficiaries argue over a apron that mom wore when she baked cakes. It was the biggest catastrophe, and I can't tell you how much they spent in legal fees arguing over an apron. But two different beneficiaries wanted this apron, and there was one apron. They are not going to cut it in half to give half to you, half to me, because it's worth it, right? So if you know of something that, something that, a beneficiary is strongly or has strongly told you that they want or they're interested, make sure you put it in here, and it just limits liability to you. Okay, now we're getting down to shares. In this case, they put shares in a mutual fund and a total amount of shares. This will not be acceptable, really. Most of the time you're talking, let's just use Safeguard or Morgan Stanley or any of the other investment companies. Typically, you own a total of 1,425 shares, but they could be in 20, 25, even they can be in 5. It could range on what is owned at the time. So if your 1,425 shares include 1,000 shares of Apple, 400 shares of PG&E, and 10 shares of, let's say, Microsoft, and another, and equal all of that, you must state each share separately and come to the total of your total shares. So I would list 1,000 shares Apple. I myself can sometimes, because I'll look at the statement, give what they call the code for the Apple share. It's usually pretty noticeable. It will be on the statement. And so you must list them all out separately because each one is valued different. For instance, the difference between an Apple share and maybe, let's say, a Samsung iPhone share, they're going to be different because, values are just different. So the probate referee has to value each different share like that. So Apple, he must value. Samsung, he must value separately. So list those separately. Do not lump them up. Okay, in this case, we have 7 100 US savings bonds. I list as much. Usually the savings bonds have not an expiration date, but a date where they no longer accrue any interest or give anything. So that's helpful. Lastly, a diamond ring. Please understand, for some of you go, what difference does it make? And I even have a bigger problem than that. And I say it in every single class, and some people will laugh at me. But if I see a diamond ring, I will be honest to God, I can't tell a 2 carat from a 1 carat, from 1.5, from 1 3/4. Until you start getting, and even let's say it's 3 or 4, I'm going to say it's big because I have no clue what that means. But it's just because I don't, diamonds aren't a thing to me. So I just don't know how to look at them and tell. There are many times, many, in many, 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 many cases that a conservatorship or a probate, the beneficiaries, there's somebody who was either promised that ring or somebody who wants that ring. It's either going to either give it to their son or they're going to keep it. I can tell you right now, my great grandmother's ring, wear it every single day. I was the only one in the family who wanted it. It's very small, but it's very old. And I love it. Nobody else wanted it, right? So it's just up to whomever. I adore it. And it's tiny, it's simple, but it's old and beautiful to me, right? And I know I'm wearing my great grandmother's wedding ring. Gives me a little something sentimental. I've had times where somebody listed a 2 carat ring and I submitted, because I have to mail this to all beneficiaries, and I had a beneficiary came back and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. The original one Dad gave her was only 2 carat, but he later bought her a much bigger one. I'm going, he did? I need to go searching and go try and find it, maybe ask, Mom, if it's a conservatorship, but if they're deceased and it's gone, I have to state somehow, some way, I didn't find it. And that means somebody else has come in the house, whether, they're a beneficiary and had keys, somebody took it, maybe she gave it, the person gave it away prior to passing, I've got to figure out what happened to it because I don't see it. So list all you can, list what you feel is valuable, art, old furniture, paintings, car collection. That's another thing that's not on here is vehicles. For a vehicle, you must state the year, the make, the condition. Now, condition, I'm talking, is it average? Is it beat up to where the doors are falling off? It's so old, it's rusted and needs repairs. Mileage is important. So are you talking, for instance, my dad's Cadillac, which I drive now, was an 86, but it has 50,000 miles on it. Now, an 86 with 200,000 miles is going to have a whole different value than an 86 with 50,000 miles, right? I still got a new car, even though to many other people, it's not new anymore. Everybody goes, what? Nobody has that kind of car at that mileage. So you want to list that information. What else? Sometimes I see tractors. Sometimes I see, because, it was a winery. I'm in Napa. So, winery equipment. Sometimes if there are equipment, say Dad, who is the decedent, was a welder or something of that. So he had all kinds of really expensive equipment in the garage. You might want to list that. So in this case, let me just continue on. You will have many different examples. You will not give value. All you're doing is stating the asset and leaving the value blank, because when this is sent to the probate referee, they fill it in. And then it comes back to you with the values filled in. And then also that probate referee will put a value here, a total value, and that probate referee will take and continue that value, and he or she will put the value here and likely total your items here. So now when I start my accounting, I know My cash assets, which I'll show will be different, will be this number. My non-cash assets will be this number. And my total beginning assets on my accounting will match this number exactly. If it doesn't, court's not going to approve your counting. That's why I say, if this isn't good, you're stuck. You can't start until this this inventory and appraisal is corrected. So let me quickly now go on to the rest because I've gone through an hour now. Wait, maybe let me ask, does anybody have questions about attachment 1 or attachment 2? Okay, going on. So now let's go to the rest of the form. I'm going to go quickly because it really will go quickly. Basically, number 3, you're just stating this is a true statement of all of my assets. If you mark it final, it will be all. If you mark it corrected and you're only correcting a final, it's still going to be all. If it's only a partial, and some people ask why I would use a partial would be, you know, the house, you want to get started on the probate referee valuing the house. The bank hasn't given you clearance yet. So you might do a partial just to get the probate referee started because they take about 60 days. And the bank, you do attachment 1. So the second partial would only be attachment 1 and you're still good, right? So that'll be the difference between one of these 2 boxes must be marked. Now, in some cases, if you have a probate estate and there's only a bank account, no cars, no real property, no real assets, and you only have cash bank accounts and that such, you wouldn't need a probate referee. So then you would mark this box. You don't need a probate referee. But don't say you don't need a probate referee and then turn around on your accounting and have real property, because then that will be a problem also. Don't turn around and say no probate referee is required, but then you list dad has vehicles. That won't work. The court will notice. They know what they're looking for. Many years of experience. You know, certain boxes, although to you they don't seem important, they tie into many other things. Now, say we're given a probate referee, you must mark this box, and if it's a probate, where you're going to find the probate referee's name that the court ordered is on the DE 140. It's the order. And it's the order that you're using to get this date. If it is a conservatorship, it's going to be on the GC 340. And it's like page 3, I think. On the GC 140, I'm sorry, DE 140, that's only a 1-page form. So it's at the very bottom right before the judge signs it. On a conservatorship or a guardianship, it's going to be on the GC 340. I think it's page 3 and it's like number 25. It'll be marked probate referee and put a name we'll put in there. You need to state the date the order was signed. This date right here should be this date in most cases. That's how it's helpful. In our example, they didn't put it, but that should be what it is. Okay, property tax certificate. What does this mean? You must, in a probate case, when there's real property, you must turn in what's called a change of ownership statement. That statement goes to the county recorder or assessor. Most of the time for us, it goes to the assessor. What this is you would mark if you have real property and tell them whether you've notified the county assessor that the decedent is no longer here and the county recorder, you would do either an affidavit death of real property owner or affidavit death of joint tenant, or in Michelle's case, she would record an affidavit death of trustee. So you're telling the court that you have filed this because this should have been done prior to even doing your inventory and appraisal. They're going to look for this. Now, if there is no real property, you would mark this box. So no probate referee, no real property, you would mark these two boxes. Probate referee, you've notified county recorder of the affidavit of death and the assessor of the change of ownership, P4, things of that, you would mark this. Okay, we're getting down. You're declaring under penalty of perjury. You will see that this says you do not sign this form until it's returned by the probate referee. There are, and I'm only going to talk down south. Down south, some probate referees, and it's getting more popular now, will not sign their portion or complete an inventory and appraisal until you've stated under penalty of perjury that this is all of the assets. So specifically down south, some probate referees, if you turn in this form to them to have them value and you have not signed it prior to sending it to them, will bounce it back to you and say, once we received a signed copy, we will begin process. And they stated, and it is getting a little bit, I haven't really had one bounce back down south yet, but I've heard of it a lot. Okay, so you would put the date you're signing the form. You are the administrator, you are the conservator, you are the guardian, you sign here. I mean, print your name here, sign here. Down below, it was talking a statement of bond. In a probate case, either bond is going to be waived or you are going to be issued a bond by the court before you can get your letters. In a guardianship and a conservatorship, almost always you're required to have a bond. Unless there's a will or something that states bond is waived and you are a resident of California, I will tell you, if you're not a resident of California, you automatically will be told by the court you must prepare bond because they don't have jurisdiction over you technically, and many other reasons, but most of the cases you will be given a bond amount. So again, you would mark bond. How much is the bond? You were, the court stated you had to submit. Or in the cases of a minor, you may have a blocked account. So so say for instance, you have a child, you're split from the father. And the father unfortunately passes away and he had a life insurance policy that named his minor child. So now you, the mother, obtain a guardianship before you can receive the insurance money. And it's very complicated with the court on the accountings and how you have to submit anything. So you decide instead of posting a bond and going through all of the court stuff that you were going to put the money in a blocked account. If that's the case, you would mark that all of the cash here is in a blocked account. That's rare, but getting more common. Okay, then this would be signed by the attorney if there was one. If there's not, you must sign here. also, so the same name would go in both places, signature in both places. Please don't forget to date these. If you don't date these will be bounced back. And I'm constantly getting them with people. I don't think they see that this says date. So I get them back without a date. Then page 2 of the form, again, carry the caption, mark the box, put the account number. The probate referee is telling the court how much they're charging to produce this document, and any expenses. They are allowed to collect certain expenses like mileage, if they had to take photos, if they had to get photos developed, if they had to get maps where they had to pay for anything of that nature. They will list the expense, and they will list here the total amount they are charging the person to prepare this inventory and appraisal. So in the case of a decedent, how much are they charging the estate? In the case of a conservatorship, how much are they charging the conservator? And in the same thing for the minor. Again, as a trustee, you would not have this. That probate referee will date it, they will print their name, they will sign it, and it comes back to you. It does not get filed with the court. That is your responsibility to have it filed with the court. Now, at this point, are there any questions? Because I'm turning this back over to Rex, who will do the accounting portion, and then I will come back to how do you get it approved or the petition to submit it in the court. Any questions before I go? Awesome. I'm going mute, and I will stop sharing. Well, Rex did it without allowing me to stop it. So I'm just going to mute myself now.
Okay, well, I'm not used to hearing Tamara muted, but that's fine. I'll get used to it. Tamara does a great job, and she has a huge amount of experience in probate court accounting, just unbelievable amount of actual interaction back and forth with the court. Now, I'm looking for where I start.
Rex, I can hear your phone going off because I know that's you and your seagulls.
Okay. Yeah, I got seagulls. Let me get rid of them. Sorry.
Should we have a computer screen on?
Yeah, we'll get everything
Yes,
set
Rex,
up.
you need to share your screen.
Okay. Okay, just as a side note and humor, what you just, the seagulls, it's an internal joke we came up with, where beneficiaries on trusts and probate, they're impatient. They don't give a damn about what all the rules are. They don't care how much work the executor has to do. And we make it a joke that there are seagulls saying, mine, 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 where is it? And that's why my phone has seagulls sounding there.
Love it.
Yeah, there's a definite correlation. I'm trying to get where is it here? Okay, my thumbnails so I can navigate. Okay, so now we have a whole bunch more fun. Hopefully everybody can see my screen that shows charges. If not, let me know some way. And Tara may have pointed it out. I will cross-reference on the bottom left of every one of our handout screens for today. in big numbers is a page number. It's 20, I'm on page 21. And if you printed this out, you might want to put a yellow sticky on it. And because I'm going to be going out to various schedules and then come back, because this is the funnel that all the data goes through. So it's kind of like a bicycle wheel. The GC 400 is like the axle in the middle of it. And then all the other spokes are your schedules. This form, as I mentioned, is required. And it says so in the lower left of the form on page 21. It says adopted for mandatory use. Every court in the state of California. And who does it apply to? It claims to apply to probates, guardianships, and conservatorships. But if you're doing an accounting for a trust, this form should be used also. And if you get called into court to get your trust accounting approved, you will be using this form. But since there's no statutory requirement to do an accounting unless a trust tells you to, or a beneficiary demands, it would be optional if it's kind of in an informal format. So on your headings, we call this caption in the top. If you're doing a trust, just list that as a trust. And then which accounting are you doing? As we discussed, Tamara mentioned that, within 90 days of appointment, you should have your inventory and appraisal filed. And then after the end of the first year, then you have your requirement for your first accounting, and then every other year thereafter. So the year numbers are for accounting year 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, unless the court orders otherwise. If I cough every so often, I'm recovering from a lung problem. So we're going to do standard account, and we're going from either the date of the inventory and appraisal, date of appointment, or the day after your last accounting, March 8th, through the end of, in this case, 1 year, March 7th. So, and we have to say it's the first account or account current. If you take over from another fiduciary, I would probably, well, you should make note that this is the first one from the new fiduciary, so it doesn't continue on. The terms on the form, first of all, I objected to because of their vagueness. The word charges, you would think, well, I'm using my credit card, I'm charging something. No. Charges, the way it's used in this legal context, is you're charged with the responsibility for someone else's money, like a bank or a stockbroker. And that's why this whole accounting law, statutory scheme came about. When one person has control over someone else's money that is not theirs. And there's a high standard. If you're interested, do an internet search on fiduciary duties to find out what you're responsible for. But in this case, we're just going to use the term charges means income coming in plus what you had at the beginning. And then credits are different than the normal term. Normally, I charge something on my credit card. Now I brought it back to the store, now I get a credit on my credit card. No, not the definition here. This is the relief of your responsibility to the ward. So it's disbursements. When after this is done and the accounting has been approved by the court, then your liability goes down for potential claims from beneficiaries or third-party family members. So you don't really have a choice in guardianship, conservators, or probate, but for trusts, if you're doing trust accounting and there's any chance that a beneficiary might want to sue you as a trustee, you send them the accounting and say, we want you to approve this. And if you don't, then we're going to go to court, use up trust money, get the judge to approve it. Then I'm not on the hook. You have a right to object. And then after the judge approves it, you have no right to object. So it's a safety net for trustees. Okay, so these are single line. Well, we start out, let's just bring it over. We've already talked a lot about beginning inventory and appraisal. This is a copy job, the cash, non-cash, and what the total assets were at the beginning. Now, this term carry value is something you have to get used to and probably use in your vocabulary. In regular tax or accounting, you have a concept called basis. So you buy a rental property, you got basis, how much you paid for it, how much is the building, how much is the land. It's a different concept. Here we have carry value, which kind of comes back to the burden that you're responsible for. And what that means is what that value was when you took over. And that never changes during your entire fiduciary responsibilities. So what I strongly recommend is in order to have other people be able to review your accounting efficiently, is you list in your inventory and appraisal asset numbers for the cash accounts, for the non-cash, and each asset only has one identifying number to it for the life of the asset. And that way it is comparable over multiple years. And let's say you had a Charles Schwab Vanguard account and item number 5 originally, and it got sold during the administration, and then that obviously that asset's gone. It's not going to be on your ending asset list anymore. Never use number 5 again. It's done. Because if you start changing the numbers on your asset list, it's difficult for the court to review what you've done over multiple years. So we start out, as I mentioned, copy job from the inventory appraisal. Then we go through each of these forms, and you can think of each of these lines like an HTML link. So there is no link, obviously, but you can think of it that way because this particular item, receipts during the period, you might have 4, 5, 6 different schedules that all funneled together to come up with this 43,000. And the format itself in the Judicial Council form has letters already for the most common ones they wanted to identify. When you start adding other schedules, like a additional property received during the period. Let's say the ward got an inheritance. I would skip the alpha description, ABCs, and switch to schedule by numbers. So you would call this one Schedule 1, and then on line, or you could even use the line number 2 or something, but it's no longer ABCDs. It helps. When you start getting really big accountings, some of this stuff you start going cross-eyed. So anything that you can have to cross-reference to make life easier will allow others to review your work and say, oh yeah, you're responsible, you did a good job. So receipts during period, we're going to cover those. Gains on sale of assets, other charges, a different category, and then we're still on the money coming inside. And if your entity has a trade or business, you don't have to do the accounting for that trade or business. So if the trust or the ward on a conservatorship owned a company, and they've got an accountant, and they give you an income statement with a net income of, let's say, 150,000, you just put the 150,000 net. You don't have to deal with all the other details of the thousands of transactions that happen within that entity. Then we start going through disbursements, and most of them, like Schedule C gets most of them. We have losses on sales, distributions, conservator ward. Some wards will get an allowance, spending allowance and things of that nature. Credits, other types of money going out. And then if we had a trade or business, then just the bottom line on that accountant's statement. And then we have deja vu all over again. We have the asset values at carry value at the end of the period. So we started out lines 1A, 1B with what did we have in the beginning? Oh, look at your inventory and appraisal. Now we're at the end of the accounting period. What do we have? You reconcile to that date, in this case March 7th, how much cash do we have in each account? And what are the what's the carry value of all the ending assets? And then we add those two together, and lo and behold, line 7 is supposed to equal line 14. And hopefully it does. If it doesn't, it can cause various degrees of distress among fiduciaries, because now you got to find it. In income tax, the IRS encourages dropping of pennies. We don't have 59 cents in tax. That's 259 bucks. We round to the nearest dollar. Courts are pretty much anal retentive, and you got to go out to the pennies all the time without fail, unfortunately. But what I do to reduce the imbalance problems is, if I'm running a series of numbers together trying to get a total, whether it's on, I like adding machine with tape because I'm old school, or if you're doing it on computer, you look at all the data you keyed in. But the point is, if you're ever adding things up, cross-check what you just added with what the computer or the screen, that tape shows. Verify everything you're adding is the message. Okay, so this is our ubiquitous, we'll call it GC 400 sum or summary. We'll be coming back and forth to page 21. And then I want to tell you about the lower right of the form. And what this is the form from the court, Judicial Council. By the way, Judicial Council, we have the Supreme Court of California. Right under that is the Judicial Council. And the Judicial Council is like the board of directors for our judicial system. And I've been to 2 or 3 of their meetings. They're awesome. We've got about 30 to 40 judges, legislators. It's over in San Francisco. It's open to the public, and they've got it on video. And then below the Judicial Council is the administrative office of the courts. And below that is each separate court. Just so you know where these things came from. But in the lower right, it says, in this form, it's from Probate Code Section 1060, 1064, and then gives you another statute. And then it gives you another reference, California Rules of the Court. And so if you are curious about something in this, and you say, you know, I don't quite understand what they're talking about. What's this stupid word carry value? What's this stupid word credits? You can go to the statute, and the probate code is, well, it's written in English, and I say that comparing it because I deal a lot with the Internal Revenue Code. And Internal Revenue Code is not written in English. It's written in gobbledygook. But I point out you can understand the probate code. And then Tamara gives me a bad time about this. She goes, no, nobody wants to look up that stuff. Well, fine, you don't have to. It's there if you want it. I call it a breadcrumb trail, so you can trace back if you need clarification. And sometimes I've had discussions with probate examiners. They want something this way or the other way. I go to the statute and it's not required. And so I tell them I don't have to do it that way. Okay, so let me mark this page. And we're going to go through the detailed schedules. And so first off, we show the details of what's cash on hand in the beginning. And it's going to pretty much look like your inventory and appraisal. Not too much difference there. Or your last, the ending balance on your prior accounting. And I do agree with Tamara on putting a vendor name, you know, Vanguard funds, and then the last 4 digits of the account to identify it. You're going to be turning in your bank statements and your broker statements to the court as part of your accounting. And we had always went round in circles with the probate examiners about turning in the original bank statements. Then we got online statements. And so with technology, and now they're making us file court papers electronically all the time. And they're changing their requirements. And from our court, Contra Costa County Superior Court, now instead of turning in all the original bank statements, they allow us to turn in a first accounting, it would be the beginning statement and the ending statement, but you have to put a cover letter on it that you say under penalty of perjury, it hasn't been modified or edited, that it's the actual document unadulterated. And if you have questions, you're turning in your accounting, it's the first one you did, you're not sure, gee, do I get this or am I way off base? Our court has said that you can bring the accounting to the probate examiners to look at, and they will comment at your request, if they think that you have the right formatting. And they'll repeat over and over, I'm not commenting on the numbers. I'm not approving this accounting. You just asked about format. We're only talking about format. And it gives you some kind of reassurance that you're within the realm of what they're going to accept. And unfortunately, the courts are getting extremely picky about kicking out things. You know, you didn't dot an I, didn't cross a T. Here, we're not even accepting it. And it's happening a lot. So, cash, we already talked about from your inventory and appraisal. And then the non-cash, let's say real property. So you take, let's say a rental property in San Bernardino is item number 6. And you take the carry value from your inventory and appraisal, listed on the right column. And then on the end of the accounting, after you've been doing them a while, for multiple years, there's a column for estimated or market value. And that's, you do not call in the probate referee. What we do is use Zillow or Trulio or something else and say, oh yeah, that house in San Bernardino is now worth 1.5 million, or it's only 1.2 million on the inventory and appraisal. And this is helpful for fiduciaries if you're in charge of investing a portfolio of securities, because beneficiaries can sue the fiduciary if they've got a risky portfolio management procedure. But if it shows here the values of the portfolio at the end of time periods, then it kind of lets the fiduciary off the liability hook. And whenever you're in charge of investing for third parties, fiduciary wards or trust beneficiaries, you have to use the most conservative investment methods. But on the other hand, you want to make sure that if you have investment or significant cash accounts, that you are getting interest on the money. We had one client get sued by her sister because she didn't invest in interest-bearing account, and the trustee's sister had to pay $12,000 out of her own money because she didn't put the money in interest-bearing account. So keep that in mind. If your ward, let's say you're doing a guardianship or conservatorship and you have a low value of assets. Let's say the ward has less than 15,000 of assets. There's a form, Judicial Council Form GC 410, that's a request to waiver of accounting. So you ask the court, say, Your Honor, there's not 2 nickels to rub together here. I've got a requirement to do an accounting. It's ridiculous because there's nothing here. And you file this request in order for waiver of accounting, and then you're out of the responsibility. Okay. And another one that I've come across is at times there's husband and wife. Let's say one of the spouses has a stroke. Now they do not have a durable power of attorney for asset management. And so the well spouse has to go get a conservatorship. And then maybe the attorney says, okay, now you got to do court accounting. And I've seen situations like this. And it's dumb because the well spouse owns half the assets. I mean, it's community property. So there's probate code sections that exempt spouses when assets are all community property, that you don't have to do an accounting. It's your money. Your probate code sections 3051, 3054, 3055, and 3088. So if that circumstance occurs, you don't want to be burdened with a lot of unneeded paperwork. Okay, so from where we are, we just basically showing the assets on hand like we did on the inventory and appraisal, so the details there, and then we go back to the GC 400 sum and plunk it down on line 1A and 1B. Okay, so where's, I'm looking for my form here. There we go. This is an optional form. I like it. Not required. But what I was talking about, the links of forms and details, the numbers of schedules, it's kind of like a funnel. So you might have, 27 pages of Schedule A for dividends. And so you could summarize those before you bring them forward to the GC 400 sum. It's optional. You're doing it on spreadsheets. You don't have any use for this. But it is handy if you're using the government forms. Okay, so let me find my place. These things are moving quickly. Okay, so now we're going to go through Schedule A for receipts, dividends. You must report every dividend that's received. So if you have a big stock portfolio, you're going to be posting every dividend. You can't combine it. You can't say the Schwab report from this month had 47,000 of dividends. Nope. You're going to put every little dividend number on the schedule. Sometimes if you get an accounting where there's a stock portfolio and there's a reinvestment concept called a dividend reinvestment program. We abbreviate dividend reinvestment program to the term DRIP, the initials. And if all of your dividends are reinvested, you need to contact the stockbroker because you're going to drive yourself crazy. Every dividend would have to be shown as dividends received. Then every 0.0023 shares that come in or that are rebought has to go on your inventory and appraisal, and it will drive you insane. You tell the broker, no dividend reimbursement program. Give me all the dividends in cash, and then every time it gets to 20, 25,000, I'll transfer it into a new investment. It'll save you a lot of work. Let's go to rents. How come my page isn't changing? Come on, page. You do want to change. Okay. Interest. Okay, so I'm getting lost here. I don't know why. It's like some of the stuff is scrambled. Dividends, and then I'm supposed to have rents, but I don't. Okay, so most of my pages are out of sequence for some reason. When you have rents, you have to show each rental payment coming in. for each property. And you don't show any expenses. On the rent side, you just show the rental income. And the expenses will go in other parts of the accounting. Now, if you have just a rental property, one house or apartment complex, you show the rent, each one that comes in. However, if your ward has an Airbnb or a hotel or bed and breakfast, that is not considered a rent, that's considered a business. So it would not just show on the normal rent received. And I warn against the concept called netting, Netting. So let's say that you've got this rental in Newport Beach and the porch needs some carpentry done and the tenant's a carpenter and they say, well, the porch is falling down, but I'll fix it for $500. You cannot net because you did a barter transaction. Netting means you would just report, well, they only paid me $2,000 this month instead of $2,500 because they did barter and we didn't charge it. You can't do that. You have to put the total gross number in that you should have received, and then the $500 for the tenant repairing has to go under disbursements. You don't net anything in Court Accounting, where you have a certain category where the income came in and it went back out. You have to split them. Now, oh my gosh.
Can I ask you a question about rent, Rex?
Sure.
Say you have the property for the decedent and you have one of the beneficiaries was living with the decedent and another one moves in. Do they have to pay rent for the time they're there for the other?
Okay, so we have, and are there more beneficiaries than those two?
Yes.
Okay. So what you have to do in your fiduciary duty is you have to make assets productive. If you don't do that, you can be liable for the unproductiveness. And with family members, it's always a delicate debate. Okay. So you are supposed to charge market value rent for each person. And you really don't have a choice. The law says you're supposed to. And it protects the non-resident beneficiaries. So how are you going to deal with this? Let's say the two beneficiaries that are in there don't have two nickels to rub together, but they still live there. So one approach would be to sign a rental agreement at fair market value with them, so you can now say that they're paying fair market value rent. And then, since they don't have any money to pay it, you say, well, I also agree that this is going to come out of my bequest when we close up the probate estate. So in other words, they are creating a debt to the probate estate for the rent that they benefited from. And that makes it fair for the other non-resident beneficiaries.
Okay.
And in a delicate situation like that, I would have all beneficiaries sign all agreements. Because it's hard to object if you already agreed to it before. Now, what's your problem now? And so
Right.
if there is a problem or going to be, let's find out up front so we can negotiate instead of waiting till later and we have to litigate,
Okay.
which is not entertaining to most people. Yeah, I had a call yesterday. This probate estate got a squatter,
Mm,
and I got a neat trick for that one. It's so much fun. You do an internet search on squatter and the word handyman on Zoom, and what happens is the squatters we had one in Oakland, a squatter in our building. We didn't do this technique. So what you do is the executor has a right to rent the building out. So they rent the building out to a handyman, like you see in the video, and then the handyman waits and sees when they leave and come back out of the building. And when they're gone, the handyman goes in, changes all the locks, puts cameras in at every angle, and locks the squatter out. And so the squatter calls the police. Hey, who's this jerk in that building? Police come out. The handyman says, I'm the tenant. What are you talking about? Who's this jerk? And the squatter has no rental rights. They do not have to be evicted. They're locked out. And I think it's just a real cute trick.
I had that problem in Florida, but in Florida, the sheriff helped.
Yeah. The idea is the squatter has no legal rights, and but you have to be careful that the handyman in this example is not considered an agent of the executor. So there's some gray areas in here, but it sure beats trying to do an eviction for somebody who shouldn't be there any which way and has no right. On the form on the screen, we had a probate examiner take our class, and she said, can't do that, right off. You combine 3 months of Social Security payments. You have to show every payment separately. You cannot combine anything. And in the area of Social Security, there might be Medicare taken out before. Some people will have federal tax withheld from their Social Security. So you only put down what you net. That's the only thing you control is what you get. Okay, so we have other Schedule A receipts, other, and you might translate that to miscellaneous. So everything else so far that you haven't found a category for, just throw it under other receipts. Could be refunds, things returned to stores, that type of thing. And then we get into gains on sale. And the way this works, we say we had to sell a house, and you end up just showing your carry value of what you sold. And then the way that this is required to be reported is you show the sale price at gross. And you ignore all sales expenses and the mortgage. And then you come up with a number and said, hey, we made $19,000. And that number is bogus. It's not really what you made, but that's the way you have to report it. And then the administrative expenses for selling a property will show on the disbursement side of the equation. And we'll cover those later. Oh, boy. Okay, so, yeah, a gremlin got into my computer file and I got duplicates and triplicates and I have no idea what happened, but I'll do the best I can with it. So we're on, I got to come back to 74 in a second. Okay, so at this point, we've gone through all of the income coming in. So we total up each of the schedules and list that on the top of the GC 400 sum, or page 21. Then we go and then we start dealing with the expense side of the equations. So we're going to disbursements. We have living expenses for the ward, list them each, amount. Disbursements, general and administrative. You can't pay the attorney or the administrator or guardian conservator until the court approves it. So in this case, you're just reimbursing the attorney for paying expenses for the estate, filing court papers and things, and things that didn't fit into other categories. Living expenses, just list them, personal items, describe them, and you might make a note if it might be questionable or look like something that might benefit the conservator, guardian. Describe why it's needed for the ward. Medical, list the amounts paid, and if it's covered by insurance, it's just the amount that the estate is paying, not the total bill. Now we're on the other half of the property sale, real property. So you have to get the final escrow statement and then list the costs that are on the closing statement to come up with your disbursements. And this is just an example. We had some extra furniture in the ward's house. It was sold through a consignment outfit. They charged 20% or $500. And now the rental expenses. You list them by property and chronologically. We one time did a beautiful spreadsheet for an accounting that had multiple rentals. And we just made all the detail and it looked like a tax return and had all the income for each and the expense by each. And the examiner kicked that out so quick, they wouldn't consider it because they can't look at landscaped documents. They all have to be portrait and all the, in other words, what seemed to be reasonable was not accepted. Disbursements, other standard tax repair and property tax, IRS tax. And now we have a loss on a sale of a car. We got an old junker, an Oldsmobile. We had a carry value of $3,100. We only sold it for $3,000. So that brings us a loss of $125 compared to carry value. So at this point, we've gone through the expenses, the disbursements. And after you get done with the disbursements, you get to go back to your GC 400 sum and list your expenses by the types that you had disclosed. Then at the end of the accounting period, now we're back on, it sounds like an inventory and appraisal again. But what you have here is what are the carry values at the end of the account period, your cash accounts, investment accounts, and the value is carry value, not mark, well, it's carry value for each of the assets, and the same with the real property. That is, these happen have some things that were appraised. I had collected a bunch of errors that probate examiners had pointed out. One of which I said, if it looks questionable, describe it, how it benefits the ward. Explain the context. Like, say, if you put a hot tub in the house, why? Is it for the benefit of the ward or the conservator? Say, you know, they've got certain medical conditions. Other errors, accounting for assets that the fiduciary is not responsible for. For example, IRA accounts, they're not part of a conservatorship. They're, well, for, I take that back, for guardians and conservatorships. For a trust, they're not. Showing income from assets that are unidentified, netting values are not acceptable. Like, say, if you have a house that's worth 1.5 million and a loan of 1 million, you cannot net the two numbers. If there are assets located outside the state of California, they do not go on the accounting. It's just within the jurisdiction of California. Does the California court have jurisdiction? So you might have some other accounting needed in another state. Another error is fiduciaries paying themselves without court order, which is a no-no. So a lot of different things. And then I want to point out a reference book for fiduciary accounting. It's published by CEB, Continuing Education of the Bar. It's rather pricey. It's about $350. It's about almost an inch thick. It's you won't learn court accounting. You will not learn fiduciary accounting from this book. But if you want to look something up, you have a place where you can look at it and get some authority for what you're doing. And CEB.com, they're in Oakland. The book is updated periodically. The author I know personally, Margaret Hand from Orinda, and she took every kind of transaction she could brainstorm to explain or to give examples. So let me see where we are here. Another schedule that's not in your material is called Schedule F. So it's called Change of Form of Assets. And Tamara Brown had given me a page from someone's accounting that showed disclosures like that. And so on the sheet for change of form, in other words, you didn't sell anything, you didn't buy anything, but man, it disappeared from my inventory and appraisal. How come? So an example would be transferred from Mission Federal Bank, $1,000 to another bank account at First Citizens. Didn't go anywhere, but it's a change in form that needs to be reported. And then the new account needs to go on your inventory and appraisal, and the old account will drop off because that account has been closed. So it's called Schedule F, Change in Form of Assets. I have already talked about the Excel spreadsheet type of court accounting, that it is more common. So are there any questions about the numerics, the forms at this point before I turn it back over to Tamara Brown for her continuing section?
I have a
Rex, what were
question.
the other handouts that we should get from the library?
You're asking, where do you get them?
You said there were a couple of additional handouts that
Right,
maybe we
yes,
should have
and
received.
what we did is we gave them to the law librarian who sent out the Zoom invitation. They were attached to the email that they were to send out. And it looked like perhaps the attachments were not attached.
Do you know what they're called so we can request them?
Yes, they were the ones.
They're at the bottom.
Go ahead. Did Tamara
They're,
say something?
they're at the bottom, and then there's the page that you're supposed to pay the thing for the Excel. It's all the way at the bottom of the email.
Ah,
Okay, let me see if that's great. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, so we did a little differently, and we just moved offices, so my life is hectic. Thank you for whoever made that comment. If it's not there, then contact the law librarian and ask. And the question was, what are they? Now, the what are they are, first of all, this handout that I've been showing on the screen. And then that one is handout number 1, I believe. Handout number 2 was the that Excel accounting that I referred to as a different way of doing it. Handout number 3 is what the title of the PDF is called, RLC's non-follow-along handout. So that was all the reference material from the courts.
okay, thank you.
And if the law librarian is unable to provide those, you could contact us and we will get them to you. But they were the ones sending out all of the invitations for everybody who's registered, because they handle the registrations. So
I think the confusion is probably because it's not as separate attachments. It's one attachment that's like 50 some pages.
that's exciting. I'm looking at,
Yeah, mine didn't include the additional handouts.
yeah, that was, we had set the Zoom up
Okay.
meeting from our office, and we tried to have everything sent to the law library, and they took it from there. So I would start with them. And,
Okay.
if
All right.
it's a problem,
Thank you.
then you can contact us again. So my portion is done. I want to transfer the baton to Tamara Brown.
I actually have a question for you before you go, please.
Okay.
So I think I made a big mistake because I was the executor for my dad. And so it had to go into probate because he had property in California. So any property, unless it's a shack in the middle of the woods, is worth enough to make you go through probate. So I didn't understand that I needed to charge my brother rent while he was living there. So he wasn't charged anything. And all of the accounts that had a credit balance on them, like the water bill and things like that, basically I let it continue to pay the water bill because I figured that that was part of maintaining the property, is that you have to water the lawn and make sure that the lights go on and off.
Okay, and what's the question?
I have to show that I basically paid those bills, but isn't it going to be as if it benefited
Okay.
someone?
Where are you in the process? Have you already reported to the court that you paid bills on that property?
Well, I've never done accounting. I have to do the final accounting now. But I've never
no, that's
submitted
one
one.
answer. You have nothing there. So what I would suggest that you do is, how many beneficiaries?
One.
Is it the one that's living in the house?
No.
Okay. Is the other beneficiary you?
Yes.
Okay. So what I would,
You can answer the question very easily.
okay, so my suggestion is you make an adjustment, tell him and charge the rent and show it as due out of his share. And let him know about that. That's my suggestion. Tamara may have a different opinion. Does Tamara have
I absolutely do. I do these often, and it is not going to be beneficial to you risking the relationship with you and your brother. It's the amount it's going to gain you to charge him back rent for living there is not sometimes worth the asking. Sometimes it's just, okay, understand, I've let you live there for free. The court does not care if there's no contest, meaning nobody brings up the point that rent wasn't charged. The only time it's going to become an issue is if there was other beneficiaries and somebody contested it. I wouldn't report it at all. You would have had to pay a water bill and water the lawn regardless if your brother was there or not, or whomever was there or not. If a squatter's in there, you still have to pay the water bill, whether that squatter pays rent or whether the squatter doesn't. It still has, you have to pay the water bill. So you're talking stuff that really, it's not even worth mentioning. Continue on, do your accounting, record you paid the water bill. And the court does not look about the amount of a water bill paid. The only time they would even look at it or ask anything is if somebody contested it. And it doesn't sound like either you or your brother are going to contest it. So you wouldn't have to show, and even if the court asks, they're only going to ask for a copy of the water bill proving how much was spent. There are many times where like a sprinkler breaks and you get this huge water bill that's unusual. It's not anybody's fault that sprinkler broke, but the decedent or the administrator is still responsible for paying the bill. It's all coming out of the proceeds of the estate anyway. So I myself would not handle it any other way but report as it is. If you did not collect rent, you did not collect rent. It is not something that is, you have to collect rent, because how do you collect rent from squatters? And that's not your fault. You shouldn't be faltered for squatters getting in. If there was a whole bunch of people, it should have been an agreement. But now going back, you can't backdate a rental agreement or say, now I'm going to take it out of your inheritance. That's for the court to decide, not you. So I wouldn't approach it that way at all. I don't think it's going to gain you any benefit, and it's surely not going to gain you any further enhancement with the court.
Okay, so I've transferred the host over to Tamara, but are there any other questions for myself at this point? Hearing none, then I'm gonna let Tamara take over.
Okay, can you guys see the document on the top of my screen? And hi, I know it's exciting. It's supposed to end at 12, so I'm gonna have to really push through. But Tiffany, I want to make sure, did you understand, or do you have any follow-up to what I said?
No, I just wanted to make sure that that was okay, because it said that you're supposed to make your assets productive, and I didn't, because I just kept paying everything.
Right, and if you didn't, you did it, and it's totally different if there's you and your brother, or if there's 5 other beneficiaries that are involved. And again, you are supposed to make them, but a lot of people, especially when there's a death, the first thing, they don't have time to just run out and start rental agreements and start renting the property that quickly, and you have a million other things going on. So if do you know how many estates I've seen, they never rent it, even if they just don't, they leave it completely open, and just because they didn't have time, nobody else is helping them. They have a life, they have, so many other things. They tried, but it just wasn't in the cards. And when you talk about when you get involved in rental agreements, and then you've got month to month, and then the property transfers because the court hearing and orders court, then you have to try and kick out those renters because maybe one of you want to move in. It just creates a whole lot of stuff. So I would not worry about it as far as the court's concerned. I would just keep moving forward, keep doing what you're doing, report income that came in, report bills that were paid as they were, and there wouldn't really be explanation.
Tamara, I have an administrative question for you. I have
Yeah.
transferred you to host. On my screen, I do not see any documents. I see a snow screen. Did you share screen? Or do I need to do something so your document?
No. I'm going to stop sharing a minute because I need to switch the screen I'm sharing. I have 4 screens, guys. So
Oh my gosh,
sorry,
you're ambidextrous.
I gave you the wrong screen.
Okay, now I see first accounting current. Thank you.
That's where I'm at. Okay, so I'm going to continue on. So what I'm going to be showing you right now is, now that you've completed your accounting's done, what are you going to do with it? You cannot turn in just an accounting to a court. They won't accept it. You have to have some type of petition to go with it to state, what do you want the court to do? Do you want the court to review it, approve it? What do you want to state about it? So on and so forth. So that requires a petition. And this is the petition for the approval. Now, Michelle, if I refer back to you, that's a trust. Say somebody contested something in your accounting, and you want the court to approve your accounting as it is and provide any type of explanation. To do so, once your case is already open, right, you would produce a document very similar to this to state what is in your accounting and explain the whole what happened, and then you're asking for the court for approval. The good thing about getting court approval of an accounting is once the court approves your accounting, which is done on an order, a totally completely separate document, But once the court approves your accounting, no beneficiary or any other person can object, contest, or say it wasn't proper or what you did was wrong. Once the court approves it, it's done, set in stone deal. Unless the other side hired counsel and there's overwhelming evidence that shows that accounting should be approved. Rex, you may want to mute so we don't hear your coughing, but
Yeah, I was just realizing that too. Thank you.
so if you will get, it really stops your liability and it stops you from having to worry about the approval. Now, in the case of Tiffany, her approval of the accounting also is going to request distribution and the closing end of a petition so that the case can be determined and she can move forward on distributing assets. So hers, has a tiny bit different approach to it. Hers will look like this. It may have a few other wordings. It may include a little bit more than what's here, but this is what I'm going to be showing you how to do. So Michelle, again, this is the part where if you had something else to do, this would not be involved in your trust administration at all. So if you did not or had other things to do, you're not missing anything if you have to pop off. But if you just wanted to see it and how it goes about, hey, love having you. Okay, so at the top, this is a pleading paper you can get off the internet. All you have to do is do a search called pleading paper, and it will give already these numbers. It will be blank. You will need to fill in all of this information. And this is basically petitioning the court. Up top, you will have, it will not stay the attorney's information. This would be all your information. Same information that I showed you that was on the inventory and appraisal that we went through. So you just repeat that header. You would not put attorney for, instead you would just put your name and what your title is. So Tiffany, hers would say her name, administrator, executor, whatever the title was given when she applied for letters. And she would also include the words pro per, or they also use the words pro se. So either one of those, that just indicates she's not being represented by counsel and she's submitting this document as a person of no real legal authority, except for she's the administrator. So you will state the name of the court. I do not put this on one line. A county would go on a separate line. That's just how I do it. But you would put the court and below would be the county. Over here in this case, this was the conservatorship. Now, the case, it was for the example purpose, the conservatorship of the person and the estate. First of all, if you were just the conservator of the person, you wouldn't be doing an accounting, because when you're a conservator of a person, you don't handle money, so you won't be reporting money. But if you're considered, you could be just the conservator of the estate, which means you only handle money. You don't handle the medical aspects and all the other things regarding the person. So let's say there could be things somebody else is handling the person, or maybe the person, like, let me give you an instance, like husband and wife. Husband's always managed finances. Wife, especially if they're an older couple, never got involved and doesn't know how. Wife can take care of herself, but she just doesn't know how to take care of the finances. So somebody might apply for a conservatorship of the estate only, which means you're helping mom pay bills and handle the money because she just never knew it, and she's a little too old to learn it now. So you're helping her. And so you would do this accounting. Probate, you would not put this, you would put just estate of and the name, and this would be decedent. So this caption could change based on your somebody's situation. Now, if you're talking, Michelle, if you had to submit or wanted to submit the petition to the court, you would state in re, IN, and then RE, and the title of the special needs trust. So that would even be a different caption a little bit. Okay, case number goes up top. I usually put a line separating case number from the title. This is actually what the court kind of calls a caption, or the title of your document, and what are you asking for? What do you want? What is this document we're looking at? Give us an idea. So in this case, if this is your first account, and for probate, it will be your first and your last. For a trust, it could be your second, your third, your fourth, your whatever. Conservatorship, same thing. If it's not your first, you're not putting first here. You're putting, this is my second account. And the wording would be a tiny bit different, because I put second account current, time period, through report of, conservator. So I include a little bit different wording in my caption, so they realize what's the time period of the counting I'm submitting and things of that nature. Again, if I refer back to Tiffany's case where it's just a probate, it is always going to be her first account current. It would say, and report of administrator, report of executor, report of whatever title she's given. If I use Michelle, it would be report of trustee. So you put your title here, and petition for its settlement, approval of a sale, because in the sample we had a sale of a vacation rental, which I'll go through that real quickly going down. And I think there was a car. And in this case, the person had an attorney, so they are asking for an allowance of conservator fee, attorney compensation. Please let me tell you, when it comes to conservatorships, a conservator is never, and I will say never, allowed to take any funds or to reimburse themselves until they have court approval through this petition. If you decide as a conservator to pay yourself prior to court approval, you will be asked to refund the entire amount of the fees taken. Likely you will be removed from the conservatorship. You could possibly be sanctioned. And you're going to get a pretty stern comment from a judge, because as you know, you sign duties and responsibilities and other documents which clearly state you are never allowed to pay yourself or reimburse yourself until you have court approval. Now, as a trustee, Michelle, you do not go through the court process for approval of your accounting. So you would need to pay very close attention to the special needs trust wording that will or should state your compensation and when you should be compensated and what for. Some trusts and some people who set up special needs trust will state that the trustee does not receive any compensation. Many. If it states that, unfortunately, you are volunteering your time, your energy, your everything. So if you're asked by somebody to be a trustee, or can they use you as a trustee, one of the first things that you may wish to ask before you agree, before they've passed away or what have you, is, are there any trustee fees involved in me doing this work? Because I'm going to be doing a lot of work. If the person states no, it is not up to you to change their mind. It is their wishes. If they state no, it is your option to state whether you wish to continue and agree to these terms. If you agree to the terms and then later change your mind, too late, sweetheart. You agreed to the terms. Now, again, it may say reasonable fee. Now you're going to say to me, well, Tim, what's reasonable? I don't know. What's reasonable to you might not be reasonable to me. What's reasonable to me, you may say that's pennies, you know. What's reasonable? If somebody or the person who is the owner of the special needs trust or the family members who also get copies do not feel your fee that you've taken or asked for is reasonable, they can contest it and ask for court opinion and or a different fee amount. They can do that. Likely they won't. The amount of money it would cost them to file the case and get in front of the judge when they have no guarantee the ruling is going in their favor, they may reconsider, or they may say, oh my God, I gotta hire an attorney. Then I have all these filing fees. Then I have all of this. It might, what I'm asking her to reduce her fees to, or, you know, it'll cost me more to ask her to reduce her fees. They may just approach you and say, I think your fees are a little high. Can we lower them a little? And maybe you agree to it. But just be reasonable and don't try, and you're not trying to take advantage of the person that's you're responsible for the special needs trust for. Is that clear, helpful? Got it? Okay. So
Question, so should, once you file for the court approval of the accounting of the decedent's trust, should you wait for that approval before you file a petition for the subtrust, for the special needs trust created?
Well, they're going to be on two different cases, kind of. You
Right.
would want to take care of the decedent's estate, because the decedent's estate is the only thing that can transfer into the special needs. Basically, if that's how it started. So
Right.
without an order transferring, an order of approval to transfer funds or real property or whatever it is into the special needs trust, you can't do an accounting on a special needs trust if you don't have any assets. So handling the decedent's estate first, waiting for your order, because again, when we turn this in, and I'll go further down, you're going to get a court date from the court. Then, you know, during that court date, if all your paperwork is in order, you're going to get an order on either that date or the very next day. But I'll go through that as we go through. And then that gives you the option to transfer into two beneficiaries, which will then create a special needs trust. And then you would do that one. But you wouldn't do it now. You would have to wait till kind of a year, really, technically, after you've gotten the assets so that you can record interest if it's money or whatever, rent if it's a property and things like that. So they wouldn't be filed concurrently unless the special needs trust was already open and you're only adding to it from the decedent's estate. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any more questions, or I may answer them through the petition. So I'll continue on. So you're going to put up here everything you're asking for, basically. You will put date of hearing, but you will leave it blank because the court will fill this in as soon as you file this. They will also fill in the time. You will know your department because they don't change once you're get your petition entered. They give you an apartment. They give you the department, and that department stays with you the whole time. If for some reason the judge changes or they transfer your case to a different department, it's a huge notice period. Like, you will get copies of a notice. You must then send out that notice to all beneficiaries and inform them. And it's a huge process. So you know if your department changes. You also know if your judge changes after you've had the first appointment, right? So your judge should remain the same unless there is a pro tem judge who's sitting in for some reason, but you don't worry about that. Okay, starting the petition, what are you going to say? You are the petitioner. I'm going to hereinafter call myself the conservator. I usually don't use the hereinafter. I will just put in quotes the conservator that indicates from now on, I'm not going to keep repeating the name. I'm just going to refer to the conservator. So as the conservator of the estate of Jeannie, I present my settlement and allowance of, I myself don't do that. I present my first account current and report of I repeat this whole whatever I put here. And I respectfully state the following. One, my appointment. Remember, when you're dealing with court documents, every document must stand on its own. What does that mean? Never will you say my appointment. Your Honor, you can go back and look at my file and you can see when I was appointment and when I got my letters. Absolutely not. That is, you want him to look at this, him, her, it could be a judge, that's a female, but you want him to look at your document and know everything they need to know, not tell them they need to go somewhere else and look. Now, if they look at this and they go, that's funny, I kind of remember this a different time, they won't even have to do that because the examiner's got to this well before a judge does. And if your dates here are wrong, your examiner is going to state it in an examiner note, and you're going to have to correct this prior to the judge even seeing it. But say you do state something in here and the judge goes, oh, that's rather interesting. I don't remember it going exactly that way. He has the liberty to go look at any other documents, but never would you leave him guessing or tell him or her that they need to go look at somewhere else. No, this is what's called the document stands on its own. It tells you within the document everything you need to know pertaining to this accounting, and you should not be searching anywhere. So remember that. So you're going to list your appointment every single time, even if this is your fourth account, you're gonna relist your appointment, so the judge knows, what are we looking at? What do we know? So I'm appointed on the 8th, which is the day I received the order or the court hearing. But it took me a couple of days to get my letters because maybe I had to do a bond application. Maybe there could be other reasons that later you got letters. And in this case, they did, right? So 6 days, this could have been a weekend. It could have been a Friday. Maybe they were closed Monday. There's so many different reasons that your letters would have been issued on different dates. Now, when I'm talking about Michelle, there was no appointment. So when decedent passed away, I became trustee on this date, and I have been trustee ever since. That has not changed, and I've kept my title, that you would say there. Okay, so at all times of this appointment, I'm acting in the capacity I was given to act, right? Conservator, executor, trustee, whatever your position. Inventory and appraisal. I filed an inventory and appraisal with the court on this date. It was showing a value of, and remember, we said the probate referee will give you what the total is. So make sure your total, like I have to look back at these documents and make sure this total should be the exact same thing as on your accounting, on your beginning assets. So does your GC 400 sum form show this as the total of my beginning assets? It should. If it doesn't, you have problems. The examiner's going to ask, hey, why don't these match? See, now you're getting to see how things flow, where numbers come from, and what everybody is looking at to match. Okay, so let's continue on. The period of the account. This account covers this specific time period. Great. When I look at the accounting, I'm going to look specifically. It should start on this date. Also, the probate examiners are going to go, okay, it started March 8th. Order was issued March 8th. She's on top of it, right? If this number or idea covers, say I put March 10th there, the examiner is going to go, please explain why you were issued, the order for appointment was on March 8th, but you started the accounting on March 10th. Please tell me why. And you're going to have to answer why you started that on March 10th and not on March 8th when the order happened, right? So people are looking at different places and matching dates and matching numbers, and they will let you know when they're not the same. So charges and credits, remember Rex explained that. You're stating, I've set forth those charges and credits on my accounting, and I'll further explain. Authorized investments. This is your statement stating that all cash was in interest-bearing accounts. Again, he used the example that if you put money in non-interest-bearing accounts, Tiffany, you absolutely should have any cash in interest-bearing account. If you do not, and you turn it in, when the judge may say, well, you realize you're supposed to have it in an interest-bearing account. And if your brother wanted to, he could charge you for not putting it in an interest-bearing account because you're losing the money. What it would take for him to file documents to get interest might not be worth it, but he could do it. Your job when you sign your duties to become appointed is every cash asset will be in an interest-bearing account. So You state that fact. Statement of liabilities, you state specifically that no taxes are due on, if there's real property, no federal or state taxes are due. That's a totally different, kind of petition when you petition the court at the end, because you have a few more things, to put through. So this is really more, for a conservatorship. A petition for probate has a few other things on there, but in this case, this is just for the accounting. Statement of liabilities, you would state if a mortgage, if the property had a current mortgage. Sometimes I see, or I would add in here, if you know there is a reverse mortgage on the property. Those are very common nowadays, and to me, the worst thing in the world, but people do them, and there's quite a bit of them. Typically, it's older people who are convinced that it's a great idea, but it's never is. And unless they are really strapped for cash and they want the cash up front, that's really all it is a loan. But they put a lien on your property, and there's all kinds of things that you have to follow upon the death or the person no longer living there. But you will state all that here. In this case, we had a sale of an automobile. This is one of the options. If you didn't sell an automobile, don't put this in, hun. That would look ridiculous. This is only because our sample had a sale of the automobile. So basically, the conservator can no longer drive the automobile. You still have to pay the insurance on it, oil changes, DMV fees, all these other things. That car will never be driven by the conservator. So alleviate all the expenses going out, and sell the vehicle. With a probate, sometimes the automobile needs to be in here because it will be transferred to a specific beneficiary, and you would state that separately. If you have full authority in a probate, though, you are allowed to sell the vehicle and turn it into cash prior to going for distribution. In this case, it is described that was on the inventory and appraisal. No, it wasn't, because I was telling you, this is odd. It doesn't show on the inventory and appraisal, but the example said it was on the inventory and appraisal. It's always going to be attachment 2 because non-cash. It was item number 7. It was sold for a loss, because I don't know, you found that all the tires barely had any tread, or it had an oil change after it was, the probate referee gave value, whatever the thing is, you sold it for a loss. So you're asking the court to approve that. Then we have sale of furniture and fixtures, same thing as the automobile. You can go through and list what you sold, why you sold it, how you sold it, things of that nature. A sale of real property, in this case, or our sample, we had a sale of a vacation home. You would state that here. Again, this is an optional item. If you didn't sell any real property, you wouldn't put that on. Additional bond. I don't see this often in pro-per documents, but it's part of the sample. Say, for instance, the bond was originally issued to you for $20,000, but you sold a house. Now you have $183,000. Likely you will tell the court, I realize my bond doesn't cover my entire amount of cash. Sometimes people go out and increase their bond on their own to match the amount of cash. Sometimes they wait for the court to tell them they need to increase the bond. There's other ways and that you can handle it. Would be, say you sell the house, you put the proceeds of the house sale in a blocked account, then you would not have to increase your bond. A blocked account means you need court approval to spend any of it, so there's no reason for it to be bonded. Bonding just covers that if any money disappears and you don't know what happened to it, of course, somehow you have to know what happened to it, but say you don't want to say, or you're going to just say, I don't know what happened to it. If money did disappear, the court knows they can go after the bond, get the money back, and then the bond company will come after you for collections. So there's a couple different ways you can handle if you didn't want to increase the bond. But in this case, this person went and increased the bond. And you will see some of the wording and examples in the wording on the document. Okay, it's very important to say whether there was a family relationship. I always give the example real quick that, say for instance, conservative has a house. The gardener is going to be away on vacation, maybe 30 days, or he says, you know, I'm going out of country. I'm going on a 45-day long trip to Paris or something. I'm not going to be here. Well, it's the house is in the homeowners association. I need a landscaper, right? Lawn has to be mowed once a week. So it just so happens I can't find a landscaper. My son's home from college. I say, hey, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to go mow this lawn. I currently pay the landscaper $50 every time he mows it. Please go mow this lawn once a week or twice a week for me, and I will pay you. There is nothing wrong with that situation. And honestly, absolutely nothing wrong. My dog wants in the room because I closed it. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with that situation. Where it becomes a problem is, say for instance, my son goes, no, I'm not doing it for $50. I want $100 every time I do it. Okay. Can you see where there's a problem where I could hire any landscaper who doesn't have a family relationship to me and I pay him only $50 an hour, but my son who lives with me, I'm paying $100 an hour. You cannot enhance your family's let's say payment plan, or your family member cannot be enriched with a conservatee's or a decedent's funds that is more than the average person charges, because there's a conflict of interest there in some kind of fashion where I'm using somebody else's money to pay my son more than I pay a regular person. Court will have an extreme problem with that. You will be ordered to return the amount of funds you paid that relative that's over the normal amount, and you create all kinds of chaos there. Again, there is nothing wrong with hiring a family member. Let's just say you have a house you decide to sell, and your say it's your best friend. Your best friend kind of has some spare time and says, hey, I'll go help you clean out that house, or I'll go clean out that house, or maybe I'll be the maid, or do a fresh deep cleaning for you. You can do that as long as you're paying them the same amount as you would pay anybody else you hired. So how would you determine that? Maybe call a few different maid services, ask what their fee is for that kind of square footage and that kind of work, get an average number, and you can offer your friend that if she asks, hey, tell me what everybody else charges, or if she comes to you and says, I charge $100 an hour, but you go through and the average rate on house cleaning is only $50, you would have to decline her services and go to the $50. So be reasonable in that also. Any questions so far? I'm halfway through and I'm going to speed it up because I know we're over the allotted time, but I really think we're covering some good stuff. And if you can stay, great. If you can't, I understand. And I'm going to go through a tiny bit faster. But any questions up to that point? Right on, we're good. Okay, so conservators' compensation. This could say conservators' compensation. This could say administrators' compensation. Please note that for a probate, Tiffany, I'm referring directly to you, you only can receive statutory compensation. Now, if you are appointed as an executor, and the will itself states that you are not to receive compensation when you become an executor, you cannot ask for it now. You have to follow the wishes of the decedent, and so would the court. If it's a trusteeship, again, and you want trustees' compensation, if the document states you are not to receive any compensation, you cannot go around it and ask the court for compensation. So please review that in your document. If it is an administration, which means no will, no trust, no document that would state anything contrary to what a judge would order, it's called statutory compensation. And Tiffany, there's very specific ways on how you get to have that statutory compensation. You add, up all of the assets on the inventory and appraisal. Remember, we're talking, let me give you real quickly the example of 1.3 mil. So what you would do is you would take out a little calculator and the statutory fee would go as follows. It is statutory throughout the state of California. So it doesn't matter if you're in Napa where I am. It doesn't matter if you're down south. It doesn't matter where you are. Statutory compensation does not change in California unless you're asking for ordinary, extraordinary fees. Now, what would be the statutory compensation if I use this number? So you get $4,000 for the first $100,000. So take your number, deduct 100,000, you get 4,000. Then next 100,000.
You can skip it if you want.
I'm sorry?
You can skip it if you want, since
You
you're
know
low
how to
on
figure
time.
out statutory. Okay, so
Yes, ma'am.
and Michelle, if you wanted to learn it, it's 4% of the first 100,000, 3% of the next 100,000, 2% of the next 800,000, and 1% for any value over that. Okay, so now you're saying, in this case, conservatorship, you're saying I spent so many hours, I went and visited, I handled whatever I need to handle. I sold the automobile, I sold the vacation home, I rented out the house, I did all of this, and I want to be, I think I deserve $500. The if you, every court has a local court rule, which is what do they consider reasonable for the person who is the conservator or a trustee if it's not stated. Typically, that ranges between $50 and $75 an hour. So you need to put in a timesheet with what you did, how much you did, how much time it took, what benefit it was to the conservatee and all of that, and you let the court approve that. Attorney compensation, if you didn't hire an attorney, you would state no attorney was hired. In this case, they're asking for the attorney because attorney cannot be paid prior to the court allowing compensation. So that part's there. We get into veterans benefits, very important to tell the court whether the decedent or the conservatee or the minor is receiving any type of veterans benefits. You must state if the person has or is in a state confined hospital, because there's chargebacks considered and other things. In this case, we state the conservatee's address. I do not do this. I put the conservatee resides in the same address, or resides at the same address as at the time of appointment or something like that, because for a conservatorship, you've already turned in confidential information providing the conservatee's address, so the court is well aware where the conservatee lives. So as long as I state that the conservatee has not moved or is still currently in the same place, that will hold true. Account statements, you will state you're submitting to the court all of the statements. This happens all the time. You are responsible for providing the court the original mailed to you bank statements. If you state, oh my God, I've done, it's been years, I didn't ask for original bank statements to be mailed to me. You can go to the financial institution. That's the only way you can do it. You go to the financial institution, you tell them that you need them to print the forms and they need to verify the forms, which means they put some type of stamp on the document saying it is a bank verified document. It is not something printed off the internet or somewhere else. And it is usable. If you try to turn in bank statements any other way, they will be rejected, because there's no way for the court to tell if you took a PDF and manipulated it to your advantage or not. The court can't determine that. But if the bank statements are verified and have stamps on them, of course, they know it's impossible, well, likely impossible, that you were able to manipulate the document. Capital changes, this would be if you sold a bunch of stock or annuities or something for some purpose, like sometimes the conservatee gets low on cash because maybe their care home is extremely expensive, they get low on cash, you needed to start selling some stocks, stuff like that. You would report what you sold and why. We're going to get down to statement of liabilities. Again, this, if there's a secured note, a reverse mortgage, anything of that nature, you would want to state that. I myself don't enter in what the monthly payments are or what the interest is or what the annual rate is. I don't enter in all that information. So it's up to you. Special notice. You must indicate if somebody has filed a request for special notice. Doesn't matter if your case is a probate, a conservatorship, a guardianship. If somebody can request special notice, what does that mean? I myself can walk into any courthouse. I can fill out a form called a request for special notice. I hand the clerk $40. I file the document. And from that point on, you are served the document as the administrator. And for that point on, I must include you as somebody I send every time I complete a document for the court or send a document to a beneficiary or do anything. You must also send me a copy of that document. I do not have to have a relationship. I do not have to state why I want notice. I don't have to state anything. All I have to do is pay $40 and you must send me everything. Now, if there's something or a reason to believe that this person who is requesting special notice is doing it for some purpose that is not lawful, then at that point, you may want to bring it up to the court and have them remove or deny the request. But that's something special and extraordinary you would need to do. Okay, we are done telling the court what we did and what we want to prove. We're getting down to our prayer. Wherefore the conservator, wherefore the guardian, wherefore the administrator is going to pray. What is that administrator is going to pray? They are going to pray that the account is approved and settled. They're going to pray that everything I put in the account will be approved. They're going to pray that the court approves the sale of the automobile, even though it was for a loss. They're going to approve that the court, they want the court to approve the sale of the furniture. They want the court now, and it's not necessary to get the court approval once they sign this, but if that's what you want, ask for it. They want the court to prove that they be paid the $500. There we go. See, this is where if the judge signs this, you write yourself a check right then and there, and you're paid. So you want to include that because you asked for it. You want to include if there's an attorney in, an attorney needs to be paid. And then you want to also say any other relief that you deem possible, court. We're going to allow you to go ahead and just fill that in. We're not going to stop you. We're not going to contest it. If you want to pay some other thing that I didn't put in here, you can. I'll allow you to do it and I'll approve whatever you decide, right? Then you'll date it, you'll sign it. You wouldn't have this attorney signature here. And there's one more thing that's extremely important. I used to get all the time people who would come to me and go, Tamara, I don't understand what the probate examiner's notes, and what they state on there is, please file a verification. Well, what the heck's a verification? I'm going to go through it. So at the end of your petition, after you've already signed, you'll notice there is a verification. It's very specific in its wording, and you should use the same wording. You are stating, I, as the conservator of the person, or I, as the administrator, I, as the executor, whatever your title is, of the above named decedent, conservative, trustor, whatever it is. I've presented the account with all the schedules. It is true to my knowledge and my belief, and I declare under penalty of perjury that it is true and correct, right? You're declaring under penalty of perjury, signing your life away, right? As I say on IRS forms. And you're dating it and you're signing it. So if you did not include this in your petition, court will not even look at your document because you haven't verified under penalty of perjury that it's true and correct. So they don't know if you just submitted a false document, right? You're stating. Now, Rex has also included a sample of how do you submit your bank statements. You cannot submit them or attach them to this petition. This petition is public record. Your bank statements are absolutely confidential. You should never include them in a document that anybody and everybody can look at. So how do you submit your bank statements that are confidential? You would create your own separate cover page. All your data would be up top here. Here is where state of California, county, I do mine the same way. The case number, what is the matter, and what am I submitting? I'm submitting my original bank statements. I don't even put why I'm submitting them. I just say I'm submitting my original bank statements. Confidential, no, actually I write confidential bank statements is what I write up here. And then I'll write in the center original bank statements like this. I put a footer in case somehow, some way this got lost that says the case number, the name of the conservatee, and then the bank statements would be filed behind this document. This tells the file clerk who accepts the documents, or if you're e-filing, this tells the clerk that I need to secure these documents and make them to where nobody except for if you're in the court can access these documents. And so that's how it goes. So that's the end. There is one more thing we don't show in the in this case where there's an order that must follow, because this is only the petition. Basically, the order will look and have the same caption. It will repeat, I'm so sorry, I went up too high. It will repeat a lot of what you said in the petition. And then at the end, it says, at the end, this comes down and says, it is ordered and the account is approved and settled. The account is approved and settled. The sale of the automobile is approved. The sale of the furniture is approved. The conservator is to pay himself $500. The conservator is to pay the attorney $3,500. That would be it. And it will be date will left be blank. The judge will enter in the date. The judge will sign, and it will say his name as judge below. And when you get that order, you then can distribute. So that's the end of it. Again, this class is given about every 2 months. You can take it as many times as you want. Rex and I will update this workshop calendar to provide dates in the future that we will be handling the class. I did want to give you, again, I'll repeat, if you have a simple question for me and you want me just to glance at something that's on your accounting and I can't balance or something happens, I will give you my email address. It is CA, the word legal, all one word, and then followed by docs, DOCS, which is the name of my business. The number 2 @gmail.com. And all you have to state in the reference line is, can you please answer a quick question, or can you glance at this for me? Even if, say, you started in accounting and you did 1 month worth of a bank statement and you just wanted, am I on track? Do I have this set up properly? I can quickly glance at it and say, yes, you're good to go, keep going. I can quickly say, no, I would change this and start off with a different month or whatever it is. As long as it's a pretty quick, I'd say at the most, I would spend a half hour reviewing anything more than that. I would say I need to put it in my calendar and get that going, but you are free to tell me and I will let you know if you're on track. Otherwise, I appreciate you all. Good luck and come back if you want. And that will be it for me. I'm signing off and maybe I'll see you, maybe I won't, but good luck and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank
you
you.
so much. And thank you for being 2 very good people asking great questions. Take care.
And
Thank
I
you.
would like to conclude also, if you would like to contact me, I can be reached at an email of Rex Crandell, Crandel,